I'm going to open our board meeting this evening. Is there any public comment on closed session? All right, seeing none, we will adjourn to closed session. Turn from closed session. There are no, there's no announcements from closed session. And so please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, roll call. Everyone is present. We are having our first in-person board meeting since, and interestingly, as I picked up my packet of things to leave the house tonight and put them in the folder I always put them in, I realized that I had the agenda for our last in-person board meeting, which was March 5th, 2020. So we are almost 1 year to the day of our, no, when we are, yeah, almost 1 year to the day of our last in-person board meeting. And we've got some plexiglass barriers. We have some social distancing. And when we're speaking, we're going to have our masks off possibly if folks choose that. And if not, we'll have our masks on the rest of the time. So you'll see that throughout our proceedings as we work through this today. So bear with us if there are, well, we're working the bugs out. So we've done roll call. Everyone is here. Notice to the public, if you would like to speak on an agenda item, please let us know. We are conducting this via Zoom and we'll call on you at the appropriate time. Recognition of guests and presentations. Are there any guests or presentations tonight?
No guests or presentations tonight.
All right. And correspondence?
We do have some correspondence to share. I would like to ask, remind everyone back. So if I could ask everyone out there to mute your phone, and our practice is to turn your camera off as well, unless you are speaking. So I see Gary's iPhone and Arlene's iPhone and Camara as parties. If you could turn your phone off, and then if everyone can make sure that they stay muted throughout this, we will try to avoid some of these challenges of Zooming with a bunch of people in the same room if you haven't experienced that. So thank you. We have correspondence tonight from Lisette Estrella Henderson, who is the superintendent of Solano County, superintendent of schools for Solano County. And this document is the county office review of the first interim report that the district filed with SCO in December that the board approved at that time. And we self-certified as qualified at that first interim, and the county, after its extensive review with Lisette's signature, did confirm that our qualified certification was true and accurate. I do like to highlight a few of the things that are included in the letter every time. They're just good for our public to know, and also reminders for the governing board and admin team as well. So the first one, and we have been discussing this, we have our budget stabilization plan. We're unfortunately making reductions, including this evening, that our multi-year projections do show that our out years, as they are called, 21-22 and 22-23, that we would have difficulties in meeting our financial obligations without making budget adjustments. So our actions previous to tonight and tonight, and as you will see in the second interim report, which will be shared at our next meeting, we will be continuing to make reductions and adjustments. We'll also be at that second interim dealing with any kind of revenue increases that we have certainty over at this point in time, which we will see what those may be when push comes to shove. The second element of this letter refers to the ongoing apportionment deferrals, which have been part of the budget that we're dealing with this year. And in essence, what these amount to is an IOU from the state. We are required to book the revenue as in our balance sheets, but we are receiving the money behind schedule. Now, there are changes happening with the deferrals as part of the better economic picture that the state is experiencing right now. And the budget proposal for next year will hopefully eliminate the deferrals entirely. But there was a concern with regards to cash flow in particular because of the deferrals. Declining enrollment, the third point, we've talked about that an awful lot. General fund support for our cafeteria fund. We've had to contribute sizable amounts to our cafeteria fund. We have an unusual year this year with no in-person learning and the universal no-cost feeding program. We'll learn more about that next meeting. The CalPERS reporting issues that we've featured in these documents before. We have some cleanup work there to do. A standard provision on these documents is if your chief business official has been with the district for less than 2 years, they note that as a potential risk factor. So Monique Stovall, our CBO, will hit her 2-year mark in May. So this indicator would come off the letter at that point in time. And then another point that they emphasize every time is just the concern that our chief business official have adequate level of support in the business office to be able to do some of the higher function work. And we actually are dealing with some potential restructuring of the business office that could be of a benefit in that area. So again, this was SCO's verification that our first interim report was accurate and properly certified as qualified. And I take any questions that you have.
All right, are there any questions from board members on that letter? Yeah, any questions from board members on the letter? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment? All right, seeing none, this doesn't require any action of us. It's just a report on correspondence. Oh, I'm sorry, there is one person who would care to make public comment. Go ahead,
Sorry,
Mike.
I'm a little slow. I find it strange that, it keeps saying that there's not enough adequate support in that office when it's got more people than it's ever had. So that just doesn't make sense. We're always adding additional office staff and it never seems to be enough. So I disagree with that.
Great, thank you, Mike. Anybody else have public comment on the letter from the Solano County Office of Education? All right, seeing none, we are going to move on to our next item, and that is our consent agenda. I'm going to remove item E off of the consent agenda. We will hear that at another meeting with a little more full presentation. And so with that, I'm looking for a motion on the consent agenda.
May I ask a question on the consent agenda?
Yes, go ahead.
It was about item F, as in Fred, Gretchen Higgins school yearbook contract. It said that it was $10. I just want to make sure that was $10 per child to pay for that, or is that the cost? I just thought it was a little gray on that. It just says 2021 yearbook cost of school $10.
Yeah, that's the cost of the school. That's what the school is invoiced per yearbook ordered.
So what's the cost for the child?
The same.
So they pay 50-50 basically?
Yep.
Okay.
Mr. Dolan, actually, it's the cost of the school. This is Miss Mack. Is $10, but then the fee for students is $13, and then we raise it after a certain point. I believe it's April. Oh my goodness, April or May something. I can't even remember that. We raise it then to $15.
Great, thank you, Ms. Mack.
Okay, any other changes to the consent agenda, questions? All right, I will entertain a motion.
I move to accept the consent agenda.
All right, is there a second? All right, there's a motion and a second. All those in favor, we need to do, well, let me think about this for a second. Actually, we're meeting in person. We don't need to do a roll call vote. So all those in favor signify you're raising your hand by saying aye. All right,
Aye.
motion passes. Hang on. Okay, all right, we are working through our technical difficulties. We're really just troubleshooting this for the whole district. Okay, so this consent agenda passed. We have got item 8 items pulled from consent agenda for discussion and approval. We don't need to do anything on that because we have already changed that. The one thing that I did forget though was we are going to change 2 items on our regular agenda for this evening. We're going to move item B2 is going to become item B1, and item B1 is going to become item B2. Okay, we are on stakeholder communications. Lucas, go ahead.
All right, hello everybody. We have some important events coming up. Tomorrow, Dixon High will be holding our second digital rally. This rally will include the announcement of our student leaders and ASB officers. Our Dixon FFA had another successful National FFA Week last week and has also played a role in the development of the rally. As far as the student mindset moving into the hybrid model, we understand the sacrifices needed to take this step as safely and positively as possible. However, we know that it will not be the same as before. Ultimately, we are looking forward to taking this step in the right direction. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And I got word from the CBOC tonight that they will not be here, but they wanted me to announce that the planned March 17th meeting will be delayed until April, so the district staff can work on reopening and so that CBOC can work on their report to the community. There is a hand raised on stakeholder communications. Go ahead, iPad.
Thank you. Sorry, it's Susie Altieri, SEIU president. I'm having my own technical issues over here. So I just want to give a report on our continuing work. We've been diligently working on our reopening MOU. Details around this work have focused on the highest safety precautions for our staff. And I can assure you a lot of work, regardless of what public perception is, a lot of work has been done from all sides. And put forth a lot of effort in this MOU for the reopening of schools, which we want is as much as everyone else, but we just want to ensure that our members are safe and taken care of with the highest precautions. So I wanted to just update you that we've been working very hard on that. All sides have, and we will continue that work.
Great, thank you, Susie. Thank you, Susie. Okay, Kathy, go ahead.
Good evening. The Dixon Teachers Association continues its negotiation with the district office regarding reopening. And so we're informing our members as to what's going on. Dixon parents and Dixon community as well can see what's going on. And we'll make sure that we keep, excuse me, I'm sorry, my dog is deciding we need to be walking here. Last week, our organization team started working and explaining to our community what hybrid learning will look like and what kind of support we will have in place for both students and families. We continue to ask the district to create a virtual tour of a model classroom for people to see online. We want to make sure our community understands the strict contingencies required to keep our students and staff healthy in this pandemic. We are happy that our work with the district office and Salona Public Health to get some opportunities for all certificated staff to get the required doses of vaccine as soon as possible. Currently, the district only has 100 codes, so many teachers are working on their own to get vaccinated. We are looking forward to getting more access to mass vaccination sites, such as Solano County Fairgrounds, to get our members ready for the return to in-person sites. We appreciate the hard work of our SEIU colleagues in all of their roles. We hope that they too have access, quick access to vaccination so that they can return healthy and to a safe environment. Lastly, we remind our community that even if, as the county slowly moves towards the red tier, we need to keep ourselves wearing masks and physically distanced so we stop the spread of the COVID virus. Please work together with us to bring our numbers down to the acceptable level so our students and our staff can return to school. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Are there any parent association reports this evening? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to our next item, which is public comment. If you have a comment about something that is not on the agenda, this is your opportunity to make that comment. Would anybody like to entertain public comment on an item not on the agenda for this evening? All right, seeing none, I'm going to go on to our first item, which is update on the reopening of school in the 2020-2021 school year. And this is for information, discussion, and action.
Muted. Thank you, Catlin. And Mark, if you can allow me the opportunity to share, please, sir, I would appreciate it. I'm anticipating we have a shorter conversation around this tonight. I want to highlight some of the changes since we last met that have taken place across Solano County and then on a larger level across the state. So, and then talk a little bit about where we are and where we'll be going here in the coming weeks. So, what's new since February 18th? So conditions have really continued to improve, and as of Tuesday's announcement from the state and follow-up clarification that we pursued from the Solano County Department of Public Health, we have now met the requirements for the red tier, and I want to make sure people hear this clearly. So this is 1 week of the 2 that we have to have red conditions before we are eligible to move from purple to red, right? So it's not a formal announcement that we are in the red, it's that we're meeting the standards for the red tier. There has to be another week of that before we can move. We heard in our Friday meeting with Public Health last week, the trend in case numbers is really very strong, moving in the correct direction. So it could be as soon as this coming Tuesday, March 9th, where the state announces that Solano County is moving from the purple tier to the red. I believe this past week there were 7 counties across the state that had that transition, and there is anticipation that a number of additional counties will be moved next week, with us having a good chance. Not a guarantee, but a good chance. What else is new since February 18th, our last meeting? So the governor and legislature finally resolved some differences of opinion that they had on how to support the reopening of schools for in-person instruction. And oddly enough, what they came up with is called the In-Person Instruction Grant. And there are just a few major provisions that I want to highlight. First off, there is an option in this grant in the purple tier, and then there's also one in the red tier. Our approach on this is to utilize the red tier model, and that is focused, as I'll say in a minute, about getting your entire school district operating in short order. The requirement, of course, is in place that you have full safety plans. You also must meet a deadline of March 31st to have the following groups of students returned to in-person instruction. So your transitional kindergarten through 5th grade students in Dixon. If our 6th graders were in our elementary setting, we'd be required for them as well. The special populations in transitional kindergarten through grade 12. Mostly when we think of these special populations, we think about students with disabilities. And in particular here, we're concerned about our students who are enrolled in our intensive learning centers. This standard also, however, applies to homeless students, to English learners, to students who may be on a free or reduced lunch program as well. Foster youth as well, yes. And then the last requirement is at least 1 grade in the middle or high school level. So not the middle and high school level, the middle or high school level. So these are actually lower standards for reopening that we had previously discussed and that the board had taken action on. Another new element here is with this in-person instruction grant is that Dixon Unified will be eligible for approximately $950,000 in funding to support our transition to in-person instruction. This money is slated to begin to be apportioned or paid out to districts in May. The remainder would be funded in August. And fortunately, we have a timeline of all the way till June 30 of 2022 to expend these dollars. So some of our earlier money we had really to hurry and spend earlier this year by December 30th, earlier this school year by December 30th. We do have an extended period of time to utilize these funds to support in-person instruction. It is nice, gratifying, helpful to have some dollars designated to help us transition into in-person. Sorry, I have a blank one there. So a couple things, use this slide last meeting. Safety remains our priority. We're following all the guidance that is out there. Shared this as well, and this went out as a weekly update. All the different areas of safety planning that we have been addressing and continue to address as we get ready for the actual return of our students. The timeline. So this is an update from what we talked about last meeting, and even what I've probably put out in last week's update on Friday. So alluded to this before, there's a very strong likelihood that we will enter the red tier on next Tuesday, March 9th. And previously there was a 5-day waiting period after you entered the red tier before you could establish a reopening date. So the practice is that you can reopen on the Wednesday following the move of your tier. So for us, that would be March 10th. As it says down below. With the anticipated move into red, we would be eligible to begin in-person instruction, like it says on Wednesday, March 10th. The board previously adopted a 4-week timeline to return all of our grade levels, not just those included in the in-person instruction grant. And at that time, that was conditioned upon what I just reviewed of the 2 weeks in purple, the 1 week in red. And then we also included a provision in your decision to have a week's transition for staff back on campuses before we would return our students. So our target date for returning, given the previous assumptions regarding cases and moving to the red tier, was March 16th. And a couple of issues that make March 16th more complicated than we'd like is first off, the whole week of March 8th is parent conferences. That's 5 days of those at the elementary setting, and at John Knight, it's spread over 3 days. Dixon High, Main Prairie do not hold conferences. So our concern about trying to transition while parent conferences is going on is a substantial one, and we want to honor the effort that our staff members put into conducting those conferences and honoring the parents' time and commitment to participate in them as well. So Monday, March 15th then is a local holiday, and almost all of our staff is off duty on that day. Our 12-month employees will be working, but all of our school offices are closed that day. So making a transition the very next day is something of a challenge. So have this revised timeline for your consideration tonight. And it shifts from moving groups in total on a Monday to utilizing Mondays and Thursdays. So we'd have a first group come back 2 days alone. Then the next group would come back with this the asynchronous Wednesday between the transition of groups in. And again, our obligation here with regards to the grant is to make sure that our TK through 5th graders are in school by March 31st, and that our at least one of our secondary grade levels is in school before March 31st as well. With this timeline, we get all of our grade levels back for in-person instruction on Monday, March 29th. So we do meet that deadline, and that does keep us on the same schedule, just with a different configuration of how we get the kids back that we adopted at the meeting, that first meeting in February. So here's how we would break this down. And part of this is to ease into the transition slightly, but there's also the mindset about trying to provide some balance across the district as we return students and staff. So on Thursday, March 18th, we would include our preschool students, the students from the intensive learning centers across all sites in the district, our 12th graders, and our alternative education program. So that's Main Prairie High School and the Community Day School. So that would be the Thursday transition. The following Monday, we would bring back our TK and kindergartners, our first graders, our sixth graders, and our ninth graders. So we would have grade levels across all sites in the district return that day. On Thursday, March 25th, it would be 2nd, 3rd, 5th, and 7th. And you'll notice that as of March 25th, then we have all of our elementary grades back for in-person. And then our final little group, and I hate to have them go last, but the way this penciled out in the end, we would transition in our 8th graders, 10th graders, and 11th graders. And I would point out that in the previous model, we actually had 5 grade level groups coming back on March 29th. So we actually do a little bit better in terms of getting grade levels back, programs back in this model with being able to move 2 up. So this really does have the same spirit of our first effort. It just is, I think, probably going to help us with this transition a little more reasonably by having some on Monday and some on Thursday, being able to just kind of disperse our troops to support these efforts. But again, meet the previous timeline parameters that the board had established for us. The next steps, as you heard from Susie and Kathy both, we are still in negotiations. We're going to continue working very hard to get those completed. This is a really critical piece for our parents and to allow us to make our planning. Today out in the mail, and if it hasn't gone out electronically, it will be first thing tomorrow, is the information necessary for family to decide to choose distance learning for the remainder of the school year. So there's a letter, excuse me, that has pretty specific details. Families will be able to go online and complete a Google form, just basically fill in your name, the school, etc. Or we're going to ask families to call their school sites and share that information directly with one of the school staff members who picks up the phone. So we are asking for these to be returned next Wednesday, March 10th. I think we're setting it as 9 o'clock. We have to have some time to be able to organize ourselves around who will be coming back in person and who will be staying in the distance learning model. So we really will be blasting this out, asking parents to get this done. We did have about 68% participation in our recent parent survey. And we want to make sure that every family that wants to make the choice to remain in distance learning really takes that active step. If we do not hear from families that they want distance learning, they will be placed in the in-person program. We had 72.5% of our families who responded say that they wanted to return in person. And so we're relying on that larger number as the basis and ask for families who are in that smaller percentage to confirm that they want the distance learning program. Okay. And the final element here, asking the governing board to meet on this coming Monday at 5 o'clock, and it'll be a Zoom meeting. We want to provide you with a resolution formalizing elements of our return, including things such as these dates, which we're presenting tonight for the first time with some concrete element to them. And also want to make sure that we adopt provisions in case there are any emergencies or any extenuating circumstances that may arise around the process of returning. We are involved in negotiations and making progress there. We want to make sure that we account for any possibilities related to those issues. Also, should there be any other additional circumstances that could pop up for the district that could complicate the return to school for our students. So that meeting will be, that meeting agenda will be posted tomorrow before 5 p.m. As is the obligation for us under the Brown Act. And again, it will be Zoomed, the same link and information. And we will, don't anticipate a particularly lengthy meeting there unless there's a lot of public comment. But we would like to request that the board consider that resolution for action on Monday. And with that, I'm done. Trying to keep it short and sweet tonight, and we'll answer any questions that the board has.
I just had a question, and DJ, I'll get to you in a second. I just had a question for clarification for folks who are listening. So, we made everybody heard us make a motion and get this rolling in terms of the last meeting. And now we're talking about doing a special meeting and a resolution. Can you talk to us for a minute about what the force of a resolution is as opposed to us making a motion, just to clarify that? Why do we have to do it twice? And I want just to make sure everybody's clear on that.
Sure, Catlin, thank you. A resolution is the most formal action that the governing board can take in its decision-making role. And it has a greater level of legal binding to it as that formal resolution. It establishes in very clear and extensive language the criteria upon which the board is taking its action, right? You will see an extensive list of reasons, conditions that exist prior to the actual language of action for the board to take, right? So it spells out very clearly the why. And then it delineates the action that the board is being asked to take. And in particular, why are we taking this step? We're taking this step to make sure that our community and staff sees the level of commitment that the board and administration has in terms of reopening. Also, that we are formally on record with the steps that we will take should there be any complications that could emerge. So I hope that clarifies for you to at least some degree why, and I can answer any follow-up if you haven't, Catlin.
Yeah, no, perfect. I actually just wanted to make sure that everybody listening at home was aware of why we were doing this sort of what appears to be twice. What was the need for that? And so I appreciate that clarification. So I'm going to open for board comments and questions. DJ, I know you had a question.
You said the phrase "I'm gonna open for," and I started getting heartburn. I thought you were gonna open for everybody. I was like, no, me first. Okay, if you could go back to your presentation. I don't know. I didn't see 4th grade on there. I'm not sure if that was oversight or whatnot. Maybe I missed it, but I stared at it for a while. And then my second question is, last time I brought up about combo classes, so I don't know if we'd come up with an idea about combo classes yet.
Yes, I do note that I did leave 4th grade off. They're either on the 22nd or 25th. They would not be on the 29th, and they're not on the 18th. So I will clarify that, and as we publish this tomorrow, I will make sure that that's included there. That's what happens when you're scrambling with a busy day. So I will clarify that. Good catch, Mr. Bowen. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Other board comments, questions?
Sorry, Catlin, DJ had one other element about combination classes. So the district has placed a strong emphasis in our planning around not creating new mixes of students and staff members and teachers. I think we've been on record for some time, and I'll emphasize it tonight, that we believe the disruption for students and frankly for teachers as well of reassigning students based on their preference for in-person or distance learning would really be a challenge. We think about all of the demands that are going to be placed on our kids transitioning back, the academic issues. I told the quick story last meeting about a student who's just gifted socially, who was voicing, I don't know how to do this anymore. I don't know how to talk to people. And we're really talking about when we get our students back, it's 50, 55, 52 days of school in that area for our kids, and the idea of shifting them from one classroom and knowing a teacher to another classroom and knowing their classmates. It just feels like something very wrong to entertain. So given that, DJ, to your question, we would not anticipate the need for any combination classes other than the ones that existed prior to from the start of the year.
I think I just meant like, let's say, for example, there's like a first, second grade combo class. I don't know if there is. What day would they come back, for example? Because first is on one day, second's on another day. I think that's more what I meant.
You had I gave a long answer on something which was important, but not exactly what you're asking. So sorry about that. We would decide that on site. I believe we only have 3 combination classes in the district. So we would make sure that those families are well informed about what we would do there. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, other board questions, comments, thoughts? All right, then do we, it's my understanding that in order to, that we're gonna make a motion to do our special meeting, is that what are the pleasure of the board? All right, so I will entertain a motion on holding a special meeting on Monday.
So move.
Is there a second?
I second.
Great, I have a motion and a second, and so please raise your hand to signify aye. All right, motion passes. And we are going to move on to our next item, which is the potential relocation of the alt ed program to the C.A. Jacobs campus.
Public comment.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Public
we got
comment, sorry.
ourselves-
And I see hands up and everything, so I'm sorry.
Hurried ourselves along.
Yeah, moving myself along there. Okay, Mariah, please go ahead.
So I just noted on the updated timeline that there wasn't 4th grade listed. So I just want to make sure that 4th grade is returning as well.
Yes, they absolutely are. DJ asked that question as well. Just a typo oversight on my part. We will clarify 4th grade tomorrow in our weekly update.
Great, and Mike, go ahead.
I find it disappointing that you don't have MOUs for either bargaining unit. Brian mentioned before that they were meeting twice a week with the teachers. And it's just inefficient that you don't have something planned. And I'm afraid that, there's going to be some hiccup that's going to delay this. I looked at the warrants last board meeting, like 45,000 for plexiglass and air purifiers and filters. I mean, the only thing you didn't buy was plastic bubbles for the teachers. So, we need to move that along, and whatever tricks are being played to, not let them work from home, or whatever, the delay was last time and they had to drive circles around the district office. We need to end that. We need to get our kids back in school. You guys all say that, our kids learn best in school, but your actions don't show it. I'd also like to invite everybody to the Open Dixon Schools Rally, Wednesday, March 17th at 11:30 at the district office. I wish I could take credit for it. I had nothing to do with it, but please show up, make a lot of noise, and tell these teachers that we need them in the classroom. Tell the district to start negotiating in good faith, and let's get these MOUs done. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mike. Eleanor Park-Smith, you're next.
Oh, I'm outside, sorry. So you can't see me very well. Anyway, so I have a couple of questions I'd like to ask. I know that the gentleman who just spoke wants to have the students in school, but I guess I need to ask, what's the justification of hybrid? It doesn't seem to be necessarily good for academics. The proposed district office schedule is that students would be synchronously in class one day with their teachers, at least at the high school level, and 4 days doing asynchronous work, and asynchronous, as we've seen, has been really unsuccessful. And then is it for social emotional learning? If they're there one day a week, that would help. But I guess my question is, why not wait until the virus goes down, the vaccination rates go up, and start a clean year? I know that that's just a I guess what's the justification of the hybrid model? And it doesn't, one administrator intimated that there's nothing necessarily positive about a hybrid model other than a transition. And so I question that. The second question I have is, when will the district have a model classroom for hybrid available so that parents, families, students, teachers know what a hybrid classroom will look like? The third question I have, will students be responsible for completing asynchronous work when they're in the hybrid model? I mean, it seems like, parents, students, and teachers really have a hard time with the asynchronous work, and yet the model that's been proposed by the district is that students would be in the classroom 1 day a week and 4 days a week doing asynchronous. That doesn't seem to be supporting. And I think the last question is, are families aware that when we go back, the students will not be seeing their teachers as much? They'll be doing much more asynchronous work. I feel like there's more contact with the students right now as a teacher. I'm seeing my students 4 days a week. It's not ideal, but we're in a pattern. We're used to a routine. And I feel like by going in, we're going to disrupt and have a week to 2 weeks of disruption in learning occurring. And there's going to be a lot of learning that has to go on, and it won't be necessarily academic. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Eleanor. Michelle?
Hi. Something that I've been tracking is data, and on January 7th, we had 2,800 active cases of COVID in our county, and today we have 280. I mean, that's a plummet. Like, I would call it a plummet. That's a plummet. And it's encouraging. It's great, right? Like, there's not as much community spread going on, which is terrific. And I think, of all the articles I've read about school openings, one of the #1 things they say is to a lowered community spread. It's not going to be 0. Who knows when it'll be 0? But that plummet of number is huge. That's a huge drop. It makes me feel better about going out into the community. I also want to remind people that not everyone has been given the gift of being able to work from home. There are probably thousands of families in Dixon where one or both parents have to leave their house to go work, and that presents a risk of getting COVID. So we might be able to limit, distancing and masking and all that kind of thing, but we can't eliminate all risk when some people have to work outside of the home. It's never going to go all the way away. I really do hope that some agreements are made by these dates to get these kids back. I would hate to think that there's a delay in getting them back to campus because an agreement can't be reached with our unions. That would be very sad to me. These timeline, it's excellent. We're looking good with the county, with the numbers, and I just really hope that we can have some students back on campus this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Michelle. Tammy, you're next.
Hi, so I joined the meeting late and I apologize for that. I was doing laundry and my neighbor texted me and said, hey, meeting. So I'm not sure if you showed a different hybrid model than what that was showed the last board meeting. But my question is the way the hybrid model showed at the last board meeting, I originally had put that I wanted all my kids to go back to school. They want to go back to school, but unfortunately with having an 8-year-old and I work for the district, if she gets out at 11:15 and my other 2 don't get out till 1, it kind of leaves me with no choice. I have to kind of keep them all on distance learning. So I'm wondering if maybe other parents after seeing that model are kind of in that same situation, as that they kind of rely on their older kids to not necessarily babysit, but be home legally with their younger kids while they're at work or whatever. So my question kind of is there a way I really don't know what I'm asking. I think I'm kind of, I don't really have a choice. I've got to keep my kids on distance learning. I could possibly send one of them to school, but then again, I'd have to be leaving work to go pick them up and bring them home, all that nonsense. And being the school nurse, I kind of got to be there. But is there a way to, if the older kids are only going twice a week, is there a way to maybe have Lala, my younger one, go the days that, I don't know really what I'm asking is if my younger one can stagger her distance learning and going to school. I don't think that's probably an option, but I figured I'd ask just to kind of get all the knowledge that I can around it. But if her sisters are at home, she potentially could be at the school And then, I just take a break to go run her home real quick or have one of her sisters come pick her up real quick. But other than that, I've kind of have to change my decision on having them back in school. Now I have to keep them on distance learning. So I'm just wondering if there's a way around that, which I don't really think there is, but I figured I'd ask.
Great,
And that's it.
thank you. Okay,
Mhm.
thanks. And Mia, you're next.
Hi, I'm Mia Lodagiani. I teach kindergarten at Tremont School, and I just wanted to say that I could not be more excited that my children would be coming back on the 22nd. I think this is a long time coming, and so I want to make sure that the community understands that teachers are a diverse group of people, and many of us have been waiting for this date to come. I have absolutely nothing to say that I'm worried about safety. I know you guys are taking good precautions, and a lot of us are getting vaccinated. My worry is, I'm going to speak for my students. This has nothing to do with safety, but I hope that the district and the board will reconsider rooming and zooming at the kindergarten level. I think when you say it like that, it doesn't sound like a big deal, but when I say engaging my students on Zoom while engaging my 5-year-olds who've never been in class yet at the same time in a reasonable way, it just doesn't work. I think it's not reasonable, and I'm a reasonable person. I think it could happen at other grades potentially, even if it's not absolutely the best thing for them. But my 5-year-olds deserve something better than that. They've never even been in school. So I have lots of groundwork to cover as far as social skills, dealing with behavior of kids who might have not left their parents for a year, don't have the background knowledge of school. I want it to be very positive, and I hope that my hands will not be tied behind my back as I joyfully go back to work with them. I hope that I can work with them fully and not be worried that I am not engaging the kids that are on that computer. Standing in one spot just won't work in kindergarten. And my little guys who stay home deserve better than that too, than seeing an empty screen. So I know it's complicated, but I hope you really take it to heart. These little tiny people really deserve so much more. Let's see if we can come up with a better plan so that if they are in the class, they have my full attention. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mia. Ms. Garcia, you're next.
Hi, it's Miss Garcia, Alejandra Garcia. I am currently at John Knight Middle School, and I've been at all the schools. I know I look crazy. I, had work today, and I'm in class still. But I thought it was really important to speak today because I'm super excited to go back to campus because, I love my kids. I've already met most of my kids in person just because that's just what I needed to do. But obviously with social distancing, masks and all that good stuff. But I guess my concern right now is I do work on campus, which I love. My room is amazing and I'm so excited to decorate it in the next week or so. The bathrooms are still an issue and I'm very concerned. Recently I hurt my knee, a similar injury from when I was in high school. Some of you guys might know that. Anyway, so I'm on crutches and right now I'm on a cane, but I'm on crutches and I have to go from A Hall to C Hall, which is fine, but I'm just like, so that's frustrating. And I thought that'd be fixed already, but it's been a couple weeks now that the bathrooms have been an issue. And then my other thing is the internet connection. Just today I got kicked off of 2 classes. For very long periods of time, and I was subbing for one of the classes. So that was really awkward. Luckily, our kids are amazing, and we have our certain students who are little leaders, so they were able to handle it. But yeah, just bathrooms, internet at John Knight Middle School. I want to come back. I just want to make sure we're good. All right, that was it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Brenda, you're next.
Good evening. Under the current proposal based on entering into the red tier and that plan falling into place beginning next week, what day will teachers be required to be back on campus?
Okay, thank you. And Erin, you're next.
Hi, I just had a quick question. I'm wondering when all classrooms will receive the PPE that they need. My classroom has not received any plexiglass shields or anything like that to prepare for students to return to campus, and we are slated to be the first to return. So that's concerning to me. So I'd like to know when we can expect that in our classroom.
All right, thank you. And Jeanette, you're next.
Hi, thank you for your time tonight. I'm really looking forward to getting back with kids. I feel fortunate to have found a way to get a vaccine last week. So I'm on my way with that. And honestly, with no help from Solano County, feels like, but my question had to do with if in case we do get a case of coronavirus at the school, at any of the school sites, if there is a published plan of action of what will occur for staff and for students. I have a friend who teaches in another state, but she is now closing down for the 5th time since they've returned to hybrid due to a case coming up at their school site. So I would just really be interested in seeing what that plan looks like and how that will all be communicated in a timely manner. So thank you.
Great, thank you, Jeanette. Ella, you're next.
Hi, this is Stephanie Roop on Ella Roop's computer, but I'm going to kind of speak a little bit for both of us. We're both excited to come back. We're looking forward to coming back. My 11th grader Lester teachers, Ms. Sunstead is one of them, so thank you, Ms. Sunstead. I want to piggyback on what Mia said about rooming and Zooming for the little ones. With our 6 and 7-year-olds, it's tricky to be able to, like Mia mentioned, get the behaviors in check and our routines in check and have children online and live. And I would like that to be looked at for our littles and have it be respected. I appreciate last board meeting or a couple board meetings ago, I mentioned about conferences, and I appreciate seeing that in the timeline and you taking that into consideration. So thank you for that. And this would be another little want, I'm sorry to have some, that we would have just to make sure and ensure that we're able to teach the kids to the caliber and rigor that they need to have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. John, you're next.
Can't hear you, John.
John, we can see your lips moving, but we can't hear you.
Still not getting you. Why don't you jump out of the meeting and come back in? We'll make sure we include you.
Okay, Marcella?
Hello, this is Maricela. I just wanted to ask about the ACES program. Will that be something that will be happening this school year, or any type of childcare for children that may need that? And then also, will we know if the schedules have been approved? I know the last meeting, you guys were going to have the union vote on that, but that way we can get an idea of what kind of childcare needs we would need depending on the schedules that kids will have. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Ryan, you're next.
Just a quick question, also piggybacking on Mia and Stephanie. I too am excited to come back now that I'm coming up on my 2nd vaccine. My question is, if we're rooming and Zooming, which again is hard with the younger grades, what happens if we lose internet? Do I have to reteach that lesson to the ones on the internet when we finally get it back? Because I can't stop in the classroom. So I think that's another consideration we need to look at, because we do have power outages and we do have internet issues, and we can't just keep repeating lessons over and over for the kids who are there during the day and the ones who missed out. So I'm not sure how that would work. So that's my question.
Great, thank you. Jenny, you're next.
Trying to unmute. Yeah, I just had a question, and sorry, I just jumped on the meeting, so sorry if this has already been asked, but I was just wondering if the governor's guidance on Monday about the new bill that was passed in the legislature is updating or moving ahead the date back to March 16th, or what date we're going back. And then also, how are they going to do 5th grade band? Like, I think it's one day a week. It's on Thursday at Tremont. It's on Zoom right now. I was wondering if that was going to be in person or not when they go back. Thanks.
Great, thank you. All right, John, let's give this another shot.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, sure can.
Yes. Okay. Okay. We were talking about the the return in, I think, the red tier, but it was all indicated that it was preferred, whereas I know the purple tier in the past was always, we couldn't do it. And is that change due to the governor's whatever he signed yesterday? And does that suggest then that we are returning based on those dates that you provided, no matter what? Are there any circumstances that would suggest, that, well, now it's not going to happen if it is possible, apparently, to return, during the purple tier as well? So thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any other, I have someone who, actually two people who emailed that I want to read their public comments, but are there any other public comments before I do that? All right, seeing none. I had one, actually this was a text as opposed to an email, another suggestion that we take pictures of the classrooms so that parents would have an idea of what that would look like. I think that's another reason that we're here modeling for you this evening. Not only because, we're all attractive people and great models, but also because you can see the setup of a little bit around how things would look like with the plexiglass and that sort of thing, social distancing. And then I'm going to read this email. So it's got a few questions. So the email says, given that the district is trying to determine the number of distance learning versus the in-person students to complete planning, will families be asked to make a final decision regarding their children's attendance before completion of negotiations and before exact aspects of the hybrid return are agreed upon? That's question number one. Question number two, for those parents who have not already decided whether their children will return or stay in distance learning, could the proposed district hybrid schedule change due to ongoing negotiations? If the schedule changes, will they be given a chance to change their mind and modify their student decisions? Number three, will students who opt for distance learning still be able to participate in extracurricular activities and other in-person activities such as sports, band, etc.? And lastly, will all classes be available to distance learning students? At prior meetings, the DTA representative indicated that DTA is against roomies and zoomies, given that there are some classes at DHS that now only have one session and not as many students. How would that be handled if roomies and zoomies were not present? Last question, actually there's five. So last question is, while issues may differ at the elementary level, will science be available to all students, and how will that be managed with in-person and distance learning students in light of teacher numbers? So those are all the questions. I'm now, oh, Nicole, go ahead.
Thank you. I just had one question, and that is, if I have, say, 4 students staying home in group A and 2 students staying home in group B, will I be able to, prior to the hybrid teaching, shift some kids between A and B so that I'm only having to room and Zoom for one of the periods instead of both?
Great. Okay, thank you. All right, now I'm going to close public comment and we're going to go ahead and answer some of the questions. Brian, do you want to start?
Okay, thank you. I will do my best, and Catlin, if I get to missing anything, please let me know. So a general statement first, that many of the questions relate directly to things that we're currently negotiating. And so I may not answer some of them specifically, and I'll try to point out at that time why that is the case. So Eleanor asked the first questions, and the first one is somewhat, it's not philosophical, but it's deeper, I think, than a basic why this schedule. And why the hybrid model? The hybrid model is, its primary function is to bring kids back to in-person school. Bam, first foremost. Under the current circumstances, we can't bring all students back for the full duration of a day, 5 days a week. We can't do it. I know in the country there are places where that's happening. In this state, in this county, at this time, that can't be done. We up here on this stage tonight believe that we have an ethical obligation to bring our kids back to in-person instruction to the greatest degree possible as soon as we can. And that's why hybrid, I think, is the direction that we're taking. It's an imperative. Our kids, with exceptions, certainly, are not growing and developing in all the ways that they would if they were together in school with the terrific staff that we have to serve them in this school district. Eleanor cited questions about schedules, which that information at this point in time is dated, really not relevant. We are continuing to negotiate, as we said several times already this evening. And so talking about the details of any specific schedule or anything that was previously proposed is really, it's kind of, well, it's not productive at all because things have changed at the table. So we want to make sure that we don't go down too many paths there. A couple of people asked about the model classroom layout, and we'll actually begin sharing video of those options, both with staff and with families next week. We have tonight, and I know we've got a very long view of us up here on the stage tonight, but we are using the plexiglass barriers that will be on student desks in classrooms. And these things are solid and easy to use. And we will have those in every classroom in the district as part of the safety procedures that we have. The last question that issue that Eleanor brought up was the async work in the hybrid model. With the approach of roomies and zoomies, or a more elegant term perhaps is concurrent learning, concurrent instruction. The asynchronous work really would be limited to Wednesdays, the current asynchronous day. Whether you're in person or at home, again, the hybrid model of grouping students to minimize, to reduce numbers and then therefore risk. In that model the district has proposed, students would be in class throughout their schedule, the 4 days that they would have in-person instruction. Just half of them would be in person and half of them would be online. And that would flip, right? So we're working, again, really in good faith and with a lot of effort from both parties, with DTA in particular around these schedules. And I can't offer here's exactly the way it's going to be today, folks. But today, as an example, we had a very productive session and made some good progress. Tammy's question, Tammy, I'm afraid you're right. I think I knew the point you were getting to. We will not have exact alignment between elementary schedules and secondary schedules that would allow secondary students to care for younger students. They won't align in that way. And so I do think that your concern or thought that you would have to have the girls stay in distance learning to make sure that that Lala had her big sisters there to help support her is in fact the case. So anybody thinking about can my secondary age students with their in-person schedule line up with elementary, it won't, unfortunately. Several people commented, staff members, and thank you, your concerns about Room and Zoom. It certainly is not the ideal way to conduct instruction. And again, we're continuing to have conversations at the table related to that. Alejandra asked about a couple things at John Knight. We do have some sewer line issues over there that we're addressing. I met with our contractor and our facilities consultant today, and those are being addressed. So we do not anticipate that problem continuing. And the internet connection, Mark, would you mind speaking really quickly where we are on Wave? We have all of our fiber pulled over there, but if you don't mind just giving a brief update on Wave plugging us in.
So the fiber is pulled, it is terminated, it is all set, and I'm expecting in this next couple of days the network technician to come out and finish up the configuration so they have their own internet connection.
Okay, thank you, sir. We actually are relying right now on Anderson's internet connection to serve JK, and that's part of why there have been some issues over there. Brenda Turgeon asked the question about when will teachers be required back. So that's part of the negotiations process. You did hear our caution about elementary teachers during conference week. We understand the importance of that week and the demands that our staff experiences going through those. So we want to be mindful of that and be careful to not impose too many demands during that trying time. Aaron asked about PPE being in rooms. There's a great deal of PPE on each site. One of the elements that Mark will be coordinating with our terrific maintenance and operation crew, I'll put it that whole way because it's many hands on deck, is determining exactly where teachers would like the large plexiglass barrier that they would have in their classroom placed. So that's part of the dynamic. That would be some of the final provisions of safety planning in there. Obviously having the tabletop barriers, but also the intent to provide every teacher, whether it be around their desk or whether it be around the center of the room where they may do their primary instruction from, hanging those from the ceilings. Mark?
Sorry, we're working with Kim to figure out where all of the PPE for special ed is going to go. So that stuff will get delivered next week, along with Aaron. I had no idea you didn't have water in your room. So a fountain, or not a fountain, but a wash basin with water.
Thank you, Mark. That's the question. If there are cases, what happens? So it is in the California Department of Public Health school guidance. Very clear provisions are outlined there. They are included in our safety planning as well. We'd like to, and actually some of those I think those were also established in a document that the district published some months ago now that went out to all staff. So there are very clear protocols that are established that are components of our safety planning and that would be shared prior to everybody returning to school. John Geyer's question, I wrote him down and I think I'm out of, I wrote him down there. Purple versus red tier dates. So I mentioned the purple tier option for the in-person school, in-person instruction grant as something that wasn't our preference and really not very practical. So that's what I was referring to there, John. I'm not sure if I'll capture exactly what your question was. When we reopen in red, you would not be required to close if we return to the purple tier. I'm not sure if that might be your question, but and if you missed the start of the meeting, there's very, very heavy anticipation that we will be entering the red tier as soon as this Tuesday. Question from Maricela about ACES happening. Unfortunately, the ACES program will not be operating this year. We were not going to have ACES this year, even if we were in person. And unfortunately, with all the demands around reopening, we're not able to provide that service at this time. We hope to have something in place for next year when we'll all be back for regular school from the first day in August or else. Ryan asked a question about what happens to Zoomers if a connection is lost. I'm not going to try to answer that exactly, Ryan. I think as evidence tonight, there has to be a lot of understanding and flexibility. And I don't think that there's a second period of teaching that a teacher is going to be required to deliver. That's the kind of thing I think would get addressed at the school site with the principal. Jenny asked about the impact of the governor's deal on timing. I did touch on that at the start of the meeting. Jenny, I know you said you got in just a little bit late. We don't hold that against you or anybody else. Our timeline, and it'll come out in tomorrow's update, we will return all of our grades on March 29th, by March 29th under our current planning. So we will meet the obligation for the March 31 under the plan from Sacramento. Also asked about band for 5th graders. Wind instruments are largely no-nos during this pandemic. Band this year has been different with some general music lessons for 4th and 5th graders, and the recorders at that level. We don't know that we're going to be able to continue with the recorders, although we are exploring that. In the enclosed classroom space, they're really not going to be acceptable, appropriate. So we'll see if we can do something more creative there. We do have a very creative band teacher in Mr. Russo, who we trust will be able to help us in this area. There was a text about the rooms and being able to show this off to people. So that, again, that will be next week. And then a number of questions came in the email. The first one was, would families be asked to make a final choice on placement before negotiations were done? We are, as I mentioned, we have put those forms, that communication in the mailbox, and it'll go out electronically as well. So we are asking for that. But then the next question was, can families change their decision based on the schedules that are finally approved? Absolutely. They absolutely have that flexibility, and we will allow a one-time, if a family starts let's say they start in distance learning and after a month decide they would like to go to in-person, then we would allow that one-time choice as well, either direction. Can students in distance learning participate in all extracurricular activities? Absolutely. No distinction between participating in person or on the distance model for extra and co-curriculars. Can a student maintain access to all of their classes at Dixon High School, especially when there's only one period of a class? That really is a critical element. We do have to provide access to the curriculum for all students, and the Room and Zoom model, the concurrent instruction model, is we view it as the only vehicle that allows that to happen, right? And there will still be some distinctions. If you have a hands-on class where a student is not attending in person, let's say AP Bio or agricultural mechanics or things like that, there will have to be some additional modifications made, but we have created talented teachers who are able to do that. And the final question related to science at all of the elementaries throughout the district. And yes, science instruction is continued in the schedules that we are developing. We think it's really important that students maintain that. It is one of the ways our teachers receive their preparation time that's called for in the contract, and physical education would also continue as well. And then the last question came from Nicole. Is there the possibility of shifting kids between A's and B's depending on the balance of students, those who want in person and those who want to work on the distance model? That is something that is a negotiable item. I'll make the general statement. We want to try to meet our students' needs, obviously to the very highest degree possible, and some flexibility in places might certainly assist us in doing that. So I think we'll be open to looking at how things play out over time. But I couldn't say yes or no on that one right now as we continue to work at the table. So, Ellen, I don't know if I missed anything or if you'd like me to
I think you
clarify.
got everything, actually. You went right down my list, so you got everything. Perfect.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, you bet.
Great. Okay. So this concludes our first item here, and we're going to now move on, as I tried to do earlier accidentally, to our second item, which is the potential relocation of the alt-ed program to C.A. Jacobs.
Caitlin, if I could jump in, I think it might merit repeating what the board approved before we opened for public comment, if you don't mind. And I can capture that if you'd like. That the board approved holding a special meeting. I'm not imagining this, am I?
No, we didn't. No, I did it out of order because I took public
Yes.
comment after we made the motion. So
Right.
we're not going to actually take any more public comment.
No. I just think
Right, okay.
reiterating for anyone
Yes, sure.
who's joined in or to reiterate after the public comment, that here's what's happening on Monday.
Yes,
in
go ahead.
general. Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, sorry. Ay. I know. So the board, prior to public comment, made a motion, and it was passed unanimously that we would hold a special board meeting on Monday at 5 p.m. and it'll be held via the same Zoom channel and everything else. And the board will be asked to consider a resolution specifying some of the details of reopening, including these dates that we've discussed tonight, and also providing language for any possible contingencies or emergencies that could arise as we work towards those dates. So the idea of the resolution is it's really the most formal and binding action that the governing board can take. And we'd like to go on record in that manner about our intent to follow the plans that we have developed. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much. And apologies for everybody for doing those things a little wonky there. All right, now we are actually moving on to item number 2, which is a potential relocation of the alt-ed program to C.A. Jacobs.
All right. So I think this can be a pretty brief item because tonight what I'm really looking for is your direction. It's not a formal decision. So I don't think this list is complete, but I'm going to run through it and then I will ask a simple question. So, and these are in no particular order. A science lab, a multi-purpose room, a gymnasium and athletic fields, a locker room, food service facility, the ability to really effectively secure the campus, adequate space to accommodate all programs, nurse's office, adequate restrooms. If we played Jeopardy, the question would be, what are things that our students in the alternative education program should have, but don't because of where they currently are located? That's that list of things. And I think there's more. And at this point in time, we have a campus that is empty. It's over on North Lincoln Street. It goes by the name of C.A. Jacobs. And talking with Yvette Ramos, the administrator for the program, very interested in seeing the program move over to that campus for next year. We believe we can do this at a minimum cost and workload. We entertained several years ago the idea of moving the Main Prairie campus to the north end of the Dixon High School campus. And that was the wrong thing to do at that time for a lot of reasons, which I don't need to rehash tonight. But we currently have the opportunity with that space to give our students in the alt-ed program what they deserve and provide them access to the full range of curriculum that they should have. So I'm just looking for your direction tonight. Say, Brian and team, get working on that.
Okay, board comments?
I was just gonna say, you called it Jeopardy, but I thought you were talking about the what's the guy that did the late night show where the envelope in his what's that? Who is that? I'm not old enough,
You're a
so-
little young for him, DJ. I was thinking about Karnak the Magnificent on Johnny Carson.
Johnny Carson, there you go. Okay. But okay, so my question is there any cost savings from moving out of the current Main Prairie campus, because we wouldn't need the I'm trying to figure out how to say it politically correct, but the classrooms that they use there, they're not like permanent, right? They're sort of temporary-ish. So I don't know if I'm just curious. I only walked through a couple of the rooms there, so I don't know. And then my other thing is, how much of C.A. Jacobs do you think would be used from this move? Like 20% of it, 50% of it? Like, what do we think about that?
So first off, I don't know that there would be a savings attached. Those temporary classrooms at Main Prairie have been in use since the late 1980s, I believe, is when that program moved from the fairgrounds of all place into its current location. We literally had a student, and this was, I think, the year before last, step on a spot in a portables and foot went through the floor. Right, that's the kind of place we're talking about over there. And our staff did some good work of sprucing some of that place up and making some improvements in the restrooms year before last. But it's still still completely inadequate for our kids who attend over there. I don't think that we see a savings, and quite honestly, I don't see that that facility would have a great benefit to district programs. However, and it's been some time, I did have prior conversations with the folks running the Dixon Teen Center about that as a possible location for them to run some program there. In terms of how much of the C.A. Jacobs campus we would be using, hard to give a percentage, but I'll give you a sense of how we would envision using that. So first off is we would not use any classrooms out on the parking lot side of the campus. Safety, we can have that whole program inside. So you need 5 or 6 regular classrooms. You need a science lab. You need access to the gym. And then there's ample spaces in the office for administration, counseling, parent liaison, any other support services that operate out of there. So it's certainly less than half the campus that would be in use. Again, you have portable classrooms at the back of that facility that are old and beaten up. I don't even want to know when those things went in. It's been a long time ago. So the opportunity to move our program, our students, most importantly, over there, I think is really ideal right now, and be a big upgrade, whatever spaces they end up using.
I have a dumb question. Would it be called Main Prairie or C.A. Jacobs? Or do I get to get in on this and get to vote for a new name of a school and a mascot that I missed out on for JKMS?
So we would talk about that. The school was dedicated to C.A. Jacobs, and it would really require board action, in my opinion, to undo that name. Talking with Ms. Ramos some time ago, she said, hey, if we became C.A. Jacobs Continuation High School, that's something that she could live with. Also, experience with some facilities where it could be, Main Prairie High School on the C.A. Jacobs campus is a way that you can also address that kind of concern as well. The Main Prairie name has a lot of history in town. A lot of people have a great affection for it. I think issues would go away really if people knew we were putting the kids in such a better spot. I think Yvette's point to a large degree is, I don't care what we're called, get us in a better place, right? And it's not to that degree of I don't care, but just the most important thing is to be in the better space, and we can figure the name out.
Other board questions, comments? Can I go? Okay. The reason why we looked into moving the students to the high school was so they could have a better facility, because that's what they deserve. And so this is a no-brainer. I think that they deserve that facility.
I also would like to have staff consider expand our program. I think there's so much more that we could do when it comes to alternative education, whether it's some kind of tech program or training program that some of the trades would be willing to do. I think we should look into that. And I also don't see any reason why the teen center couldn't be incorporated as well.
All right, other board questions?
When I don't want to give away Nick's next program, but he's going to be talking about ways that we can showcase programs in the Dixon School District, and having a state-of-the-art alternative ed program that grows what we currently have. And I liked what Melissa said about offering other kinds of programs and projects at the site will really, I think, be a boost for us. As it is now, it's more of a, when you're looking at the issues of equity, to put kids in a program that is kind of like just held together, the facility held together with glue and paint. It really is, I think, not good for Dixon. And I am wholeheartedly in support of moving our alternative ed to C.A. Jacobs. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jewel. Lloyd, do you have any comments?
I just like to echo the thoughts of Melissa and Jewel. I think they're right on. It's always concerned me that that facility is not being used, and it's got a lot of potential if you think outside the box, and shifting Main Prairie and other types of programs that we could create makes a lot of sense. So I don't know who thought of this, but it's a good idea.
Lucas, do you have something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. And I'm here to speak for the students, and I think it would benefit the students a great deal if they were in a place like C.A. Jacobs rather than their location now.
Great, thank you. And first, I want to just remind our viewers that if you are not speaking, please turn your video off. And I wanted to say, I sort of thought this was going to be a broader topic, and Melissa's touched on it, Jules touched on it, a little bit echo of that. But I was looking for a little bit more specificity, and maybe I'll just add that now and we can proceed forward with that. I'd like to see 2 specific programs on that campus in addition to Main Prairie. So 100% behind Main Prairie moving there. That's a great idea, and I'm glad we're going to use the facility that way. I'd like us to look specifically and have staff report back on putting an independent study learning resource center on campus, because I believe that some people are not going to want to come back to us in their traditional format. And so I would like that resource center to be there. There's an obligation for students doing independent learning to come onto campuses in order to meet their minutes. And so that program there. And the second program that I'd like to see us look into is an adult education program. I think we need that in this community, and I think that's a perfect location for it. So is there any other direction that you need from us on this at this time?
I don't believe so. Some of what you asked about there at the end, Catlin, is really part of what Nick will cover with program stuff. I could have expanded the content there of in describing this, of having community classrooms, having meeting rooms available for the 4-Hers or scouts, partnering with the city for programs that they could offer, and obviously doing everything that we can to offer programs that engage our kids, our adult learners. We had English as second language classes going on in the mornings at elementary schools. Gosh, what a great place. And especially if we leave that front side of the campus open from our programs. So yeah, I should have framed this with that a little bit more. effectively. But no, we anticipate being able to turn this into a really great resource for the district and community. So.
Great, perfect. And I'm going to go ahead and turn to our public now and get some public comment. Mike, go ahead.
All right. You know, I hear a lot of, I hate to say it this way, but I don't know how else to say it, uneducated, you know, thoughts here about facilities and costs and things like that. So I really hope you guys will dive into that a little bit better. All of Brian's things that he mentioned are available at Dixon High, and the utilities are already on there, and it wouldn't cost any more. You know, you're talking about a building where you're going to add more utilities, you know, and be running a bigger space. There is going to be a bigger cost. There's going to be a cost to move. It's not going to be small. We're talking about layoffs right now, and I can't believe that, you know, we're going to lay off people, cut hours, and we're talking about this kind of spending here. Let's see. What about the roofs? Oh, I'm gonna speak by punctuation because I don't know if my questions are not clear or if it's just too easy to ignore me. How does this work into our master plan? What is the budget for the roofs and the air conditioners over there? That site has major roof issues, and as bad as Main Prairie people think that it is, it's got a brand new bathroom. None of the roofs leak over there. And a lot of the things could be fixed if we just put effort into it. You know, I mean, the fact that we don't have a facilities plan, and I say we, the community, or, you know, whatever, I still include myself, is, you know, Brian's fault. I mean, when we allow things to degrade, yes, they're going to be garbage. So, you know, there's no real plan in that. You know, it sounds good, but, you know, there's no plan. You know, I agree with what Melissa's saying about expanding programs. You know, when I was working over at Main Prairie, you know, I let one of the kids use my drill gun, and they were just like so excited to like put in screws. And I think a technical education would be awesome, but there's a cost associated to that. You know, and again, we're in declining enrollment. We don't have money. We don't budget properly. We have no budget for roofs. We have millions and millions of dollars needed in roof. So it's all a pipe dream. Let's see. That's all I can think of. I do want to touch on the John Knight thing. You know, I'm sure Brian will have a different story, but we advised him more than once before construction and during construction about the bathroom issues and the plumbing. So, you know, the fact that we're in January now, or it was supposed to be done in January, and we're in March now, we're having these problems. It's just totally confirms my mismanagement thing. It's ridiculous. And there's a whole nother list of stuff going on there that somebody told me about that I'm not going to share because I don't want to out that person, but you know, the internet.
Sí, porque el próximo año.
The internet and the sewer lines are, yeah, an issue, should be corrected. And he's known about the sewer lines forever, but there's other issues out there. So I encourage board members to go take a look over there and see what's really going on. Thanks.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, iPad, you're next.
You're muted, Mrs. Ramos.
Well, that is not a surprise. I just wanted to say thank you, Brian, for bringing this forward, but also, you know, as we talk about a woefully inadequate facility for our At Promise students, we also have a wonderful staff that has put together programs and activities for our students that have given them both academic and social emotional success. So let's not forget that we're also need a facility where these wonderful staff people can really excel at their craft. That's all. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Yvette. Gary, you're next.
I thought I was being incognito. You guys recognize me immediately. Hey, I never thought I would ever say this too much or too often, but I'm kind of agreeing with Mike. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of layoffs. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars that are going to contractors to help people do the work that they're doing now in the office. There's hundreds of thousands of dollars that's being spent, and then you're talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars moving to a facility that when it rains, it's Lake C.A. Jacobs in the hallway and in the gym. And we've had multiple times trying to fix it. I just think in this time of declining enrollment and talk about and possibility of firing people and combining jobs for people that are overworked and underpaid for the jobs they're doing already, and you want to talk about and have the exciting idea of moving to a campus that's not ready for people to go in. And I think that if we're going to spend the money to fix up C.A. Jacobs, we need to spend the money to fix up C.A. Jacobs and then possibly look at Anderson, which was the plan in the beginning. I have no offense for the kids at Main Prairie. I go there all the time and help the kids and help the staff as much as I can. I don't see a problem with any of that, except for the fact that the hundreds of thousands of dollars it's going to take to move. It's not just the move. It's also the fixing up the place. It's also maintaining and paying for that stuff to be running. There are a lot of great ideas about where to put Main Prairie. You can put it in the back of the high school campus, which was a reasonable idea. There are 8 to 10 rooms there that is available for Main Prairie to go to that are brand new, and they'd have access to all of the technology, the ag facilities, the art facilities, which is ceramics and drawing. The teacher already goes to both campuses. There are plenty of things, computer labs. There's multiple computer labs where they can do other programs other than just, we have a multimedia teacher, and he can, especially with us being one-to-one on the computers, they don't even have to go to the multimedia labs anymore to do a lot of that work. Or the ceramics teacher can come over there and do a lot of stuff, and then the kids can move on campus. So I just think you got to look at the whole picture before being excited about moving Main Prairie from one bad place to another. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Mrs. Mattson.
So I wasn't going to say anything, but I want to address a couple of points that were made. There are leaks at Main Prairie High. My heating unit went out and they don't make those parts anymore. So I'm walking into a classroom that's 43 degrees in the morning, but that's okay. Over at Main Prairie High, we improvise, adapt, and overcome. Yes, there are layoffs. The budget's tight. I'm going to be one of the ones to be laid off, but that's okay. This is for the kids. They know what we think and how we value them based on what we do for them. So long-term, big picture planning means making the hard decisions. And I am all for investing in these kids and moving them to C.A. Jacobs and giving them what a larger site, a more adequate site would offer. So I am asking that we please move these kids to that site. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Is there any more public comment? All right, seeing none, I'm going to close public comment, and Brian, I'm going to have you address a couple of the questions that came up.
Sure. Sorry, Yep, sorry. And I didn't hear questions as much. Help me out, Catlin. I guess I was not tracking questions as well, please.
Sure,
Yep.
Mike asked about what about the roof? And then he
Okay.
asked if there was an issue with our, if we had this as part of a master plan in terms of moving the facility.
No, we're in need of developing an updated master plan. That is a genuine need of the district, without any question. And we do not have a plan at this time to repair the roofs that are in question. Those are accurate statements. We learned a very, very hard way when we left what is now known as the John Knight Middle School campus, the cost of leaving a building empty. A very, very hard lesson. And while C.A. Jacobs has issues to it, those issues would only intensify if we leave that campus empty. So in terms of the points around the financial impacts of this, there's also a great financial impact of not occupying a building. And one of our concerns there of leaving it unoccupied is we actually have a solar facility there in the parking lot that we're really obligated to occupy the site and use energy that's produced there. So there would be some issues any way you slice this. The greater point about how much money is this going to cost, obviously, I don't have a dollar figure for you on that tonight. We can't, honestly, we can't spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to make this happen next year. I also believe we don't need to. We're really talking about a small move when you consider the number of staff members that are involved. You're talking about being able to reuse a great deal of furniture and equipment that is available, while also identifying and obtaining materials that will allow for the programs that we're going to be able to offer there that we currently can't. So, I'm not in a position to say, hey, let's spend a lot of money on a lot of things. I don't believe that initially here that this is going to be a tremendously expensive move. However, the calls to improve the roofing and any other issues over there are legitimate, and that's part of what we have to plan for. Okay.
Great, thank you. All right. At this point, I'm actually some of us have been here since 4:45, so we're on the third hour right now. I'm gonna take a quick 5-minute break, and we will be back with you all for B1. Actually, we're gonna start with B2 next. So we'll be back with you for B2 next. Turning from, whoops, no, we're not, hang on. All right, now we're returning from closed session, or from our break. And we're gonna move on to item number 2, B2, update on the Equity Task Force progress.
Good evening, Superintendent Dole and Board of Education, and everyone in the audience. We are very happy to be with you this evening, a small group of us from the Equity Task Force to present a quick update on our progress. I am going to go ahead and share my screen so that we might get started. I have the honor to present this afternoon, or this evening rather, with 4 of the members of the Equity Task Force. Tonight with us, we have Lisetta Bundes. She is a Dixon High School student representing the students in the Equity Task Force. We also have Casey Balt. He is a Dixon High School parent. Teddy Nogoy, he is a Tremont parent. And finally, we also have Ms. Angelina Arias, Main Prairie High School counselor. In addition to that, the Equity Task Force is well represented in the audience. I took a look at the participants tab and I see that we have Adrian Lauder, our pupil services coordinator, joining us today. Ms. Jaime Echeverria from Gretchen Higgins is also in the audience. Our executive director of HR, Ms. Cindy, is here. Jody from John Knight Middle School, our assistant principal. Ms. Alicia Matson, Main Prairie High School English teacher. We also have Ms. Rayito Ferris, our Anderson principal. And finally, we have Ms. Treva Foster in the audience. She is a district ELD instructional coach. Although they will not be presenting this evening, they are here. And I wanted to acknowledge their presence. I'm sorry if I missed anyone else in the audience. We do have a little over 100 participants, so I took a quick look at that. So without further ado, I would like to hand it over to Casey to take us through the presentation tonight.
Great, thank you, Maria. Thank you, board members. So as you see on our first slide here, so the mission of the district is to close the achievement gap for students by preparing them for college and career readiness. And as part of that, you've adopted a policy called Board Policy 415 that speaks to equity. And specifically, it ensures to, or intends to ensure that equity is an intentional result of the policies and decisions you make. And also that regular monitoring is done to ensure that policies and procedures are not disproportionately impacting certain student populations, and that in fact equity is neutrally or positively impacted. Next slide, please. So as part of that, the Equity Task Force, we believe it's our mission to operationalize the intent of Board Policy 415. It is a lengthy document as things go. It's about 5 pages. We spent a couple of meetings just going through it and trying to understand it. And it doesn't exactly roll off the tongue. And so we have developed as part of that we boiled those 5 pages down to 1 sentence that's much more operational, and you'll see that later in the presentation. But we're going to be using that as a guideline as we review data points, measures of equity, to look for areas that are most in need of improvement or areas that could most quickly or easily benefit from action on your part. And we're going to come back to you with recommendations for that. Next slide. And I think Lisette will be next.
Hi, I'm Lisette. Sorry, I wasn't able to start up my video, but I'm going to be presenting some information about who exactly is participating in the Equity Task Force. So the first thing I'd like to mention is that everyone who is in the Equity Task Force had to apply to be a part of it. So I had to fill out an application as well as everybody else. And I believe that this application process has helped our group be as diverse as possible and make sure that we're representing all the major groups and student groups within the district. And part of our group, we have listed on the slide, we have students, family members, counselors, classified staff, classified management, teachers, and administrators. And by having all these different types of people, we've really been able to get input from all different perspectives and all different viewpoints of our district, because everybody in the Equity Task Force has different backgrounds and just different perceptions of our district as a whole. I'm one of the 7 students that's part of the Equity Task Force, and even just us students, we're all part of different activities at Dixon High School. So yeah, the Equity Task Force is really representative, and we're really doing our best to make sure we're diverse as possible. Thank you.
Okay, so this very diverse group that makes up the Equity Task Force reviewed 9 measures of equity and selected 4 areas to focus on. The first area we chose was employment and retention of diverse staff that reflects our student demographics. The second is professional development for all staff on culturally responsive instructional practices. The third is building positive school climate that promotes student engagement, safety, and academic support for all students. And the fourth is allocating funds for support programs and services that provide all students equitable access to opportunities for success. Next slide. The task force also is currently reviewing both the California Staff School Survey and the California Healthy Kids Survey. And the purpose for doing that is to identify areas of need and gaps in services. And at a later date, we will be making recommendations as to how to improve those gaps. And now I'd like to turn it over to Teddy.
Teddy, we're not able to hear you.
Oh, sorry about that. Yes, so we knew that for us to really move forward, that it was important to know what equity meant, what it meant to us as a group. So we thought it was very important for us to define it and define it in a way where it was concise, short, yet very effective. So we worked collectively as a group to come up with the correct definition Next slide. So we used the National Equity Project definition as a guideline for us to, again, really get a clear understanding of our mission. That way we could come out with the best best advice yeah, so the definition we came up with, next slide, was that student and the individual support systems receive the resources they need when they need them to achieve social, emotional, and academic success. And that was the definition we all felt very comfortable with. And I think with that in mind now, we can move forward with our task. Back to you, Maria.
Thank you, Teddy. The Equity Task Force has been meeting monthly since October, and that definition of equity that you saw was something that we have been working on collaboratively since November, condensing equity into one short, simple to understand sentence that can be easily expressed by anyone in the committee, as well as really understood by any stakeholders. It's a little bit more difficult than it seems. So I definitely want to give a huge shout out to the entire Equity Task Force. It's been a lot of work, and I so appreciate your time, collaboration, and open-mindedness. I've so enjoyed working with you so far, and we will continue through the end of this year working. My mistake. Working collaboratively to select, to not only select, but select data to back up the measures of equity. So we selected 4. Those are the only 4 out of the 9 that exist in the board policy that we'll be working with this year. We are going to continue to review data points that are related to those measures of equity. So if we are looking at retaining a diverse staff, or at providing professional development that is culturally relevant for our staff, we have to look at what our staff is telling us, and we're doing that by looking at some past surveys that we have available. At the end of the year, we are going to make formal recommendations to you, the Board of Education, to address the needs identified during this data review period. Now, the work of the Equity Task Force has been extensive. Again, we meet every month for an hour and a half, well into the evening, and I really thank all of you that participate. But as you know, as we have said before, the work of the Equity Task Force will not end this year. This is something that we are looking to continue into the following year, but and really many years after that. It's ongoing work. It's work that we will always have in front of us, and it's work that I am honored to be able to participate in. So without any further ado, what questions do you have for us?
Board members, questions for the Equity Task Force? And thank you for that presentation. That was great. Any board member questions? All right, seeing none. Oh, go ahead. Sorry, Joel, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have a question, but I have, I want to tell you about an opportunity that the Solano County School Boards Association is doing an equity training.
Oh.
And there will be 3 1.5-hour sessions on the second Monday of the months of March,
Do public comment? Is there any public comment? It looks like there is no public comment. All right, so thank you again for this presentation. Thank you all for participating in the presentation. I really appreciate hearing all of your voices.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thanks. All right, and we're going to move on to B1, which was B2. Which is now B2, Dixon Unified School District Programs, Actions, and Services to Increase Student Enrollment and Retention.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Nick Germani, I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Ed Services. And just to reflect back on the presentation we just had, I'm lucky enough to work very closely with Maria and really want to congratulate her and her team on such a great job. She did make one mistake in her presentation. She said how fortunate she was to participate in the equity work. She's leading that equity work, and I think she needs to be acknowledged for that. So thank you, Maria, and everyone else doing such great work there. My presentation tonight is going to touch on something the board has asked us to talk about with regard to our efforts to increase enrollment. Are you seeing me? Oops, wrong thing here. 1 second. Apologies. Hitting the wrong button, wasn't I? Sorry, guys. I'm used to working on 2 screens. Does it show me? Oh, it's seeing you now. Okay. Are you seeing my presentation?
No, we're not.
Okay. I thought I had it queued up.
Yeah, it says Jill. It says Jill Fry is screen sharing right now.
Okay. There we go. Let's try this now. How about now? All right.
Yep, we got it.
Sorry about that. Okay. So I want to start off with our objectives tonight is to highlight and celebrate some of the initiatives that we already have in place in the district, as well as to discuss some potential additional programs to further address our student enrollment and retention. Before I get into some of the programs I want to highlight, I do want to mention that this program treads very lightly on the tremendous efforts of our staff from all of our classifications, our support staff, our teachers, administrative staff to keep these programs going. So if you don't see those folks mentioned enough, that's not by design for this. It's more that we're trying to highlight some of those programs that might attract families to our district. I think it's important to start with the things that we're already doing. So first up, we wanted to really talk about the social and emotional supports that we have in our district. We have mental health clinicians, our wellness centers, all these led by Adrienne Lauder and her wonderful staff. Dixon was in many ways ahead of the game when it came to this with our initial LCAPs many years ago in supporting students. We are consistently having conversations around increasing these services, the wellness centers being a great example of that. And as we move forward in planning beyond this year and thinking about expanding these programs, it's certainly something that happens during the LCAP process. We believe we have safe schools. Anybody who walks on our campuses and gets a chance to talk with our kids is immediately compliments how well behaved they are, how respectful they are. When I was the high school principal at Dixon High School, anybody who came on our campus, especially those who spent time at other high schools, that was the first thing they noted. So we have safe schools, really well-behaved kids. We have small class size averages, TK-12 in our district. Something to keep in mind as we talk about our district. Finally, student technology access. We are a one-to-one district now with new technology, with new computers for all of our students. This was a process that Mark and his team and members of my staff, Jake Ritchell especially, started last year. But with our COVID dollars, we're prepared to give all students new hardware when they return, in addition to access to lots of new technology platforms that we've all learned to use during took advantage of the pandemic, if you will. And last and certainly not least is our commitment to AVID district-wide, AVID being a program that's designed to make sure that all students graduate from our school's college and career ready, with a special focus at the secondary level of with identified students who come from groups that are underrepresented in college admissions, really focusing on them to get them into college, while certainly not ignoring our students who are career bound, but really making sure that all of our kids have a shot at achieving their dreams. We are deep into that process at Dixon High School. We are newer into it at JKMS, although they are far along as well. We are year 2 right now with our elementary schools with AVID, and year 1 at Main Prairie. And just a quick shout out to Main Prairie High School and their total embrace of AVID. They're doing such a great job with that. I want to talk about a few elementary specific programs that we have. So first of all, we really believe in our designated systematic ELD program. We dedicate, this is a legally mandated program, but Dixon Unified dedicates more time and resources than a lot of other districts do in the way we structure it to make sure that all students are taught well, at the appropriate proficiency level, in addition to coaching, in addition to ongoing professional development. We have a reading intervention program for struggling readers. We committed to this investment early on in the LCAP with our LCAP dollars. So we have, depending on the school site, up to 5 intervention teachers to work in small groups with our students to really make sure we catch them early and get them reading what they need to read and make sure that they're on track to graduate college and career ready. We also offer science that is taught in a specialized setting by science credentialed teachers. And this is not something that is common in most of our other elementary districts. We do this as a way to deliver prep time to our teachers. And same with the physical education. There are plenty of local districts that don't have PE teachers at the elementary school. That's not something that's required by law. We're required to deliver PE, but it can be done by the regular classroom teacher. We have PE teachers to make sure kids are getting their critical skills taught to them by folks like that. And then we do have a 5th grade music program as well, as is mentioned tonight, really critical to making sure our students get some music education. Certainly something that we could look to. We've always talked about wanting to expand that. It has not happened in recent years, but we do have a 5th grade music program as well for our elementary programs. Some secondary specific programs that we want to talk through. You know, our new state-of-the-art middle school is something we need to be crowing about all over the place. It is beautiful. It's a new facility housed in a wonderful older site. It's the newest middle school around, and we need to be talking about it. We have a new school farm at DHS that is on the precipice of opening, and will really be an attractive part of our Dixon High School offering. It's going to be an amazing site, and you know, we look to find ways to include other students in the district in that as well once we get that rolling. We have a large percentage of our students that graduate A through G qualified. We're really proud of that. One piece here, we have 14 different AP classes available to interested students at Dixon High School. You know, over the years, many years, we lost students to some of our neighboring high schools, especially to Davis. And, you know, I was always proud as Dixon High School principal, and I know that Stephanie is as well, to look any family in the face and say, we have more AP classes than your kid could actually take unless they're, you know, take an incredible course load. So we have a lot of offerings for our students and really diverse offerings as well. And we ran the data last year for this. Over 40% of our 10th through 12th graders were enrolled in at least one AP class. And when we break that down demographically, those students who are enrolling there are from all kinds of different student groups. So really, really proud of that. We're really proud of our teachers for their efforts to recruit and retain students in that program. We have career technical education opportunities for our students to participate in. We have a fine arts program. And as of last year, thank you to the board, we now have a Seal of Biliteracy program as well for all of our students who graduate Dixon High School in our main prairie, having achieved certain academic standards in both English and Spanish. We'll talk quickly about a few potential programs to increase enrollment, and none of these things should sound new to you. In fact, one was mentioned earlier tonight. The first is something we talked about in the fall, and it's a two-way bilingual immersion program. When we talked about it in the fall, this would have been we would have liked to have something in place for the beginning of 21-22, and we're not going to have it ready to go next year. We've had we'll just call it an interesting year with all the additional planning going on around distance learning, return to hybrid, while just planning next year generally with completely different look of our students coming off of a year and a half of really challenging years as far as just a very different experience. Long term, the goal would be to build this through 12th grade, but it starts early. It starts in kindergarten with your first cohort of kids, and you build them through. We think this would be a great opportunity for our English learners, but also our English only students. This isn't something that's just limited to our the students who come to us speaking Spanish. It would be designed to really capture all of our students. And if you think about what that could do for the culture of our schools, it would be amazing. You know, there are some considerations here. You know, we don't anticipate this being at all of our school sites, especially to start with. So you'd have to create some new enrollment procedures around boundaries. We'll likely have more interest than we're able to accommodate, especially in the early years. So we'll have to talk about a lottery, et cetera. Those things can get complex and complicated, which is why we really want to take our time next year as we wrap up this year and next year, planning that really effectively. And then staffing. As we know, recruiting teachers in California can sometimes be a challenge. And when you add a layer of requirement onto recruitment, in this case, having a BCLAD credential, that can make things a little more complicated. Not impossible, but just something for us to consider as we move forward. The next one, this I brought to you 2 meetings ago, and this is something we are still talking about, and that's this universal TK. And by that, what I mean is that we allow any student who is kinder eligible to access our traditional kindergarten program the year prior. Right now, the way state law is written, students who are born between September 2nd and December 2nd are eligible for TK, and any student outside of that window, districts are not required to accept those students. And in fact, there's a financial burden placed on districts if they accept students from outside those windows. But we, as I discussed last time, are exploring ways to offset those fundings. And we believe that we would be unique in this offering. I think long-term, this is probably where the state's going. But if we can get ahead of the game, it might be a way to get families who otherwise might explore options outside of Dixon Unified into our district to see the great teachers that we have, the great staff that we have, and maybe stick with us for the rest of their schooling. So this is still in the talks for 21-22. Some more information around funding did become available this week, but we need to make sure we can afford this because there will be some additional cost to us. This we would assume would be offset by the additional enrollment we get later on, and we'll see how this goes. And one nice thing is this would allow us to expand our TK program to all of our elementary sites, not just Anderson. Last but not least, so this was mentioned earlier by two of our trustees, the Virtual Academy and our Independent Study Program. There's lots of different ways we can explore this, but the idea here would be to create some sort of a parallel program or school even to allow students this option long term. That may be that students enroll in Virtual Academy or an Independent Study Program. Those are actually different things, even though there's a slash there. So we're exploring options for a K-5 and a 6-12 program. And this would potentially attract students currently who live in Dixon Unified, but who are using these programs elsewhere. And I think as Trustee Masita mentioned earlier, we probably will have some families who would like to stick with distance learning for the foreseeable future. I think as we transition back to hybrid, we'll have a better sense as to how many of those families are. We can start polling them. Some considerations here to do this effectively. There are some certain conditions that need to be in place. And one of them, frankly, is facility, which is the C.A. Jacobs piece, as Brian mentioned earlier and was mentioned, may help us with that because it is, in my opinion, while you do have a virtual independent study programs, you need to have some time where kids can have some face time with their teachers. That's what studies of these highly effective programs always have that option for kids. So I think we need to be able to figure that piece out. And then cost of program, both the startup and maintenance of, is really an unknown right now. I am somewhat familiar with the costs associated with two of our local districts to run these programs, and they do cost. So we need to be thoughtful about that, as it's been mentioned earlier tonight, around where we are as a district with regard to budget. So we just need to be mindful of that, of balancing what we think would recoup in enrollment from the cost of starting up this program. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I know I talk really fast, and you probably have a lot of questions. So,
all right, board questions. Board members have questions. DJ?
Always, yeah. Can you go a little bit more detail about the cost to start up the virtual academy? Just something I would like to throw out there too. I think that if that were to get initiated specifically for the elementary K-5, I would like to ensure that some of the benefits that you mentioned for our current elementary programs, such as science and PE specialists, would still be able to be maintained in some capacity in that virtual setting. So yeah, those two things.
Would you like me to answer those as we go, Catlin, or wait till the end?
No, I think I'm sorry, I think for board questions, go ahead and answer them and we'll, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I mean, I'd be lying if I said I had all those questions answered for you right away there, DJ. I think one thing that I do worry about is scope, right? And so as we get more people involved in programs, they are, I don't want to say that they're cheaper to run, but it starts making more sense to apply the FTE that you need to run those programs. I'll give an example. We had an independent study program at Dixon High School specific to Dixon High School that a couple years ago we shuttered. And I'm not trying to say that we'd run a similar program or not, but it stopped, frankly, becoming it can cost prohibitive to run a program with the amount of students who are participating in it. And so as you're starting a program, you hope that you get enough kids to actually validate the amount of FTE that you're putting toward it. And until we know that, we just don't know that. And then, yes, I mean, every time you layer in a specialist, an RTI teacher, a science specialist, et cetera, those do cost. So we try to figure out, I think, how to continue doing those things in the name of equity and making sure that those kids still have those experiences. But more research to be done there.
Great, thank you. Other board questions, comments? Anybody? No. Okay, I think I'm going to open for public comment. Are there public comments or questions on this item? All right, seeing none. What do you need from us tonight?
Mr. Dolan, would you like to take that?
Muted first. No, sorry, I was just getting the mask off and getting myself unmuted. So I think, I don't know that we need much, honestly. I think you guys have made your interests really clear over time. You know, the combination tonight of talking about that C.A. Jacobs campus as well as featuring some of these elements, I think is a good blend. And certainly we have some opportunities there given that. I think part of one thing I would touch on. So I think we know what you guys are interested in, and calling out the obvious as well. We've got to do a better job of marketing ourselves, right? We've talked about that a number of times as well. And as we're making progress on an updated website and some other marketing activities, trying to reach out to the home developers and make sure that people understand that this is a good place to send their children to school as well. Getting some videos and other tools out there in the community, and you know, for people to see when they're thinking about coming to Dixon. It's great to have the programs, but if people don't know about them, obviously, you know, the impact of them just doesn't matter as much. You know, the word of mouth element of attracting and retaining, I don't think can be underestimated either. I happened to see a Facebook post today where a family, did you guys see that too? You're nodding your heads. Yeah. You know, I think it was a military family coming into the area and asked, and this was in Dixon 411, I believe, asked about, you know, would Dixon High be a good place to send their child? And holy smokes, I don't know how many comments it ended up on. And I was just cruised there for a minute. I was taking a quick break. But the love that was shared, not just for Dixon High, but for the community, which is great and true, but also for the district as a whole. That was really gratifying, and helping find ways to promote that kind of discussion and conversation, and use some of the testimonials from our families about their experience would be really powerful too. So, you know, I think we've got two elements to work hard on. And again, you've been clear about both of them. The first is, what are those programs that we can offer? And two, how can we show people who we are more effectively, and be able to provide that easy look at, oh, that's a good place. You know, that's a good place for my kids to go. That's a good place to work. You know, that's a component of this as well. So, Nick, I don't know if you feel like you need anything, but I think it's pretty clear the path that we need to travel here.
It is, yes. Thank you.
Okay.
Great, thank you. And I'll just say I saw the same Facebook post and it was really nice to see that about the district. I would also, it would be nice if maybe, and I think some of the, questions that came up and some of the things that Nick said he didn't have information on, if we could start working towards some of that. I'd like to see some of these programs in place, when school starts. And I mean, that's my goal. It's March, early March now, and that gives us some time. And of course, our primary focus is getting kids back to school, in-person learning. But I'd like to see us working concurrently on this as well. So, all right. So that item is completed, and we're going to move on to the update on Solano County and Dixon Unified Partnership. And this is actually the Solano County Library, which is also the Dixon Public Library.
Yep, and so again, we'll quickly share my screen here. Oh, Mark, I need access to share, please. Thank you. All right. Oh, I keep hitting the wrong thing. There we go. I keep hitting share twice. Everybody got it? Yes? All right. So I want to thank Jake Ritchell, who's not with us tonight. He's the TOSA out of the Ed Services office for putting this PowerPoint together. It's a brief one, but more than anything for really bird dogging this program with Solano County Public Library Partnership. What a good opportunity for our kids. And also want to thank our partners at Solano County Public Library for doing the outreach and working so collaboratively with us. So students in Dixon Unified have all been issued a library card with the Solano County Library. They can go to the solonolibrary.com, and with their username, type in their DIX and then their 5-digit ID number. And then their password is their last name. They are in as members of our library. So with that come two main primary benefits. First and foremost is access to the county's ebooks and audiobooks. And the second is really exciting, access to free tutoring services through the library. So talk first just quickly about access to ebooks and audiobooks. As you can see an example on the left, they've got the ebooks there. On the right is the audiobooks. Students, the library only has so many licenses per books. So like a physical book, they would check it out and be able to access it for a certain amount of time and then return it to the library, of course, all virtually. Really, really exciting way to provide access to our students. And finally, for the tutoring services, you log in and you go to the tutoring page and they get you a tutor. It's pretty simple. Jake has been experimenting with this more than anything. As he said, he's jumped in at different times. The longest he's had to wait for a tutor is 3 minutes. All the tutors are vetted by the library and by Prentice Hall, I believe it was. Don't quote me on that, but one of those publishers and available for our students to use. Jake's gone in a couple of times and sort of pretended to be a kid because I think he probably likes that to see how it's going. And he says it's about as easy as, oh, it's Princeton Review. Sorry, it's on the top there. He said it's about the easiest possible thing in the world to do. All free to us. So this has been a great investment of our time and a great investment for our kids. It's just rolled out, so usage data we don't have yet, but we're hoping this becomes a long-term option for our kids in Dixon Unified. And that's it.
Great, thank you. And for those of you who don't know, the Dixon Unified School District Governing Board also sits as the Dixon Library Board. So we've been excited about this partnership for a while now, knowing about it on the library side. So now I'm going to open for board comments, questions about this. Go ahead.
So I personally have not heard of this, and I'm wondering whether or not you'll take advantage of the use of teachers at the high school, and whether or not the teachers can kind of take advantage of this resource as well and make it kind of well known for all students once it's fully rolled out.
Yeah, so we did get some marketing materials from the county that we need to disseminate and get and start doing the publishing. And obviously that'll look a little different for our high school friends. There's some discussion about trying to create some competitions between the schools as a means to perk up some interest in this. We'll see how that goes. Yeah, we'll need to obviously leverage the resources that we have, and I think encouraging our staff to be the front lines. This is a great idea, Lucas.
Okay, yeah, I think that would work.
Great, thank you. Other board questions, comments? Anybody? Nope. Okay, thank you, Nick, for that presentation. I look forward to everybody using the library. All right, moving on to C1. This is the resolution 211644. Dixon Unified School District Board of Trustees relative to the reduction or resolution of elimination of particular kinds of certificated services. Cindy, go ahead.
Yes, thank you, President O'Halloran. Good evening, board members, Superintendent Dolan. This item is before you tonight for consideration. I am going to share screen and go through the PowerPoint presentation. We recognize that these type of items are very difficult, not only for our board members, but for our staff as well. And because of how school districts are being funded, we do have to process and address these issues based upon what we know as of right now. So this item before you is our elimination of particular kinds of certificated services. And it's been mentioned a couple of times already in the past other board meetings, but we are in a declining enrollment, including for next school year. The fiscal health of our district is of a concern. We do continuously monitor our enrollment and budget throughout the year. And during the months of October and January, Exec Cabinet dedicated a lot of time to meet with individual school sites, departments, to discuss a variety of things, including budget, excuse me, program needs, district needs, and staffing allocations for the 21-22 school year. Through this process of these individual meetings with site and departments, which sometimes required multiple meetings with certain departments and school sites, we would review the current enrollment and projected enrollment and program needs for next year. We'd also review any current vacancies or vacant positions that we have, and then the overall staffing of the whole school and the whole department. Just a friendly reminder in regards to our Ed Code requirements that we must abide by of issuing any precautionary layoff notices prior to March 15th. And then typically there would be a layoff hearing conducted in the month of April with an administrative law judge. And the administrative law judge's decision would be taken to the board for approval in the month of May. And then thereafter, the Ed Code stipulates that any final layoff notices shall be issued prior to May 15th for the next school year. In the board packet, we do have our particular kinds of services to be reduced for next year. You'll see under the certificated management header, we do have a reduction of half-time of secondary vice principal at Dixon High and half-time vice principal at John Knight Middle School. And then following that, you'll see school sites. And then following the school site name, you'll see the particular kinds of services. For Dixon High School, there would be a total of 4.0 FTE, and FTE stands for full-time equivalency. Next, you'll see a reduction of 1.0 for Community Day School. And then for John Knight Middle School, you'll see a total reduction of 4.0. And under elementary, there's a reduction of 3.0. And the grand total reduction in FTE is a total of 12. What we will be doing, should this resolution get approved tonight, is we would be taking all known attrition into account for the 21-22 school year. And attrition could be resignation, retirements, a leave of absence for the year next year that could create attrition. And that would minimize any precautionary notices that would need to be issued by March 15th. Then thereafter, part of that process, before even issuing those notices, reviewing of seniority date and credentials to determine the least senior certificated staff in that particular kind of service, and then sending out notices to impacted employees and offering them a meeting to meet with HR to discuss their individual situation and also share with them the process and timelines in which they're entitled to. We will continue to keep our DTA president informed of the process or the progress throughout the process. We'll work with our legal counsel to determine if a layoff hearing is needed. And typically, if there is a layoff hearing, there will be an administrative law judge's decision to share with the board. And if there is not, there would still need to be a stipulation signed by both parties that would still be taken to the board in May. And then again, if any final layoff notices needs to be issued, it needs to be issued prior to May 15th. Staff does recommend approval of this resolution. I'm open for any questions. I do want to share that we do have a couple attrition that has come in for next year. So we are collecting that information as it is received in our department.
Okay, are there board questions or comments on this item?
Yeah, I have a question.
Okay.
For the vice principal positions at the at Dixon High School and at John Knight, is that what will happen? Is it there'll be a vice principalship shared by those schools?
I'll speak to that, Cindy, if that's
okay.
If that's okay.
Please.
Yep. So these are separate positions. Oh, I've got a bunch of echo here, sorry. These are separate positions, so they would be impacted individually at each site. Thank you. Okay, now I can hear myself. Well, first off, everything that's on these lists tonight is difficult to put on there, and that is the case for these positions as well. And I would say that at this stage of process, what we're doing here on March 4th will be very different than what the final outcomes are. Cindy mentioned attrition. We do have both people who've already provided notice and those who have let us know that they're going to, but haven't formally done that. We have issues like at Dixon High School, where many of the bulk of the reductions there are actually absorbed by people who this year are teaching 120% or an extra period. And so at this point in time, they are reduced just down to that, their normal full-time position. So the numbers do not look good in any way when we do this, and especially Phil, for the people who would be directly involved in this. With the assistant principal positions, to work back to that specifically, what's driving these numbers is enrollment overall, and that's the case at John Knight and Dixon High School as well. We we have concerns about being able for the schools to be able to function, especially in terms of reopening with the staffing, the administrative staffing at that level. And as we are doing with classified positions, with certificated positions, and with administrative positions now, we really are looking at, are there things that we can and should do out of learning loss mitigation or ESSER money or any of the other COVID funds to be able to add to services that we may need or restore services that have been eliminated or reduced. And again, this is in all three categories of employees, and it is one we are entertaining here for these administrative positions as well. So we're very accountable for how those dollars are spent, right? And whether it be a teaching position or more parent liaison time, or you name it, including these administrative positions, we're going to be working very creatively to try to fill gaps and make sure that we've got full services going, right? When it comes to much that's on these resolutions, we're talking about these precautionary notices, these preliminary notices, and then a lot of work to try to shore up and make sure that the services the sites needs are provided. So I gave you more there, Jewel, than your question just about is this one position or two, but I think providing, and Cindy did a great job on kind of this technical side of this process and what it all means. But I think some more context is probably valuable as you guys face the difficult choice of voting on this.
Great, thank you, Melissa.
Yeah, so I wanted to just ask about the certificate management. Do they have to be noticed, like the teachers by contract, by a certain amount of time? Because I would like to see how, I mean, you said it yourself, we're not sure if we're going to be able to run school sites. I feel like before I can vote on it, I have to have you show me that we can effectively run a school site before I can vote on that.
Sure. Yeah, I really appreciate your thought. Unfortunately, the certificated management has the same March 15th deadline. You know, and whether you call them precautionary or preliminary, and we've used both terms tonight, that is what they are. They are not final.
Okay.
You guys have the dilemma of, you know, of what to do on these. But what I think Cindy and I can both provide assurance is that so some of this is purely driven by the number of students that we have, right? And we're working from ratios or formulas, staffing ratios, contract formulas, those types of things that we take our projected enrollment and we multiply and divide and all those things, and that gives us our number, and then we adjust. Others of these are much more subjective, and these assistant principal positions are a good example of that, where we do have the obligation to ensure that we can provide services. And we're in a unique situation for next year in particular, and hopefully beyond that, of having funds designated for learning loss. And whether we're writing new job descriptions, creating new classifications, again, classified, certificated, admin, if that's what it takes, that's what we're going to do. So your concern is legitimate. Tonight is required by March 15th, and again, that preliminary element to it.
But this will come back for a final vote before it's said and done, right? So
In
by
May,
that final
yes.
vote, you can prove to us that this is what's
Yes.
needed. Okay.
Yeah. You have to deal with it again. Authorizing final notices is in May. So, and that's a good amount of time for us to do this work and this planning.
Great, thank you. Other board questions, comments, anybody? No, DJ, go ahead.
So I know that you said that this was basically presented with what we know now. So I assume that, you know, everything going to the legislature, AB 86, I believe it's called, has no, you know, effect on this. I'm assuming that. I guess I'd like to confirm. Okay, head nod. That's good enough for me.
Yeah. Confirm.
All right. And then the second question is, can you give me an idea of how many actual notices will go out? I know that even if it's just a range, like is it going to be 8 to 10 out of this 12? You know, general idea, because I know you said a lot of it's kind of soaked up through attrition, and more from the 120% down to 100. Can you just give me a general ballpark? Is that legally allowed, or can I get an idea?
Well, you're asking an HR person, and I don't want to give out any misinformation ever, or misleading information. And I think it would be irresponsible of me to just take a guess at this point, because the analysis in itself hasn't even been conducted for me to even determine who's impacted, how is the attrition aligned with the particular kinds of services. Will someone submit a leave of absence for all of next year that would create some attrition prior to March 15th? So I wouldn't feel comfortable putting out a number. What I can tell you is that the resolution itself would authorize a reduction of 12.0 FTEs, if that helps.
I did read that. Is 12 the maximum number of notices you could give, or could it be more than that technically?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, as we go through this process and whatever changes in May, we'll take back to the board before final layoff notices are issued. Basically, the 12 FTE means you cannot, at the end of the day, which I mean by the end of the year, you cannot lay off more than 12 full-time positions, right? However, when you're issuing precautionary notices by the March 15th deadline, which is going to segue into this next item on the board, there are teachers that do have the same seniority date. So there's a process for that as well. But to meet the Ed Code requirement, you do have to issue and then go through the process of breaking that tie, which is the next item.
All right.
I'll just add real quickly. Some people get a full notice. It's the full position. Some people get a partial notice. It can be as small as 0.1 of an FTE. It could be 0.4, just depending on how things play out. When you break down the resolution into the actual notices, all those considerations are taken, right? So that the range, the number of individuals who receive a notice really is dependent on how this resolution is carved up, and then accounting for the attrition. And I can assure you that it is our determination to issue as absolutely the fewest number of notices that we possibly can, right? So as Cindy does her analysis and then implements it, we want to make sure that we are doing it as conservatively in terms of the number of notices we give out as possible.
So if two people are tied for the same 1 FTE, they'll both get a notice right now? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, other board questions, comments? Like, anybody? No? Okay.
Madam Chairman, I find that this is always one of the toughest things of being a board member. Laying off people is not in our best interest. It's not in the students' best interest. It's a morale killer among teachers. And it's not going to help improve the way we do business in educating our youngsters at Dixon Unified. But I get why we have to do it, because of the declining enrollment mode. And we have to reverse that somehow. And maybe, you know, Melissa's ideas about innovative programs or maybe doing things outside the box that we haven't thought about before is a partial answer. But I get, you know, last February, you were in a position where you had to lay off 23 positions. And I sat in that meeting and I wasn't on the board then, but I was sick to my stomach, and I'm sure you were too. And I don't want to do this, but I understand why we have to do this. And that's why I'm going to vote in favor of this resolution.
Other board comments, questions? Let's go ahead.
So I'm choosing to abstain from this because I feel like if I were to put the way that I feel out to all of you guys, it wouldn't be fair, as my position as a student and your guys' lives at stake, your guys' work and everything. So I'm going to choose to abstain from this.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and this is a formal resolution, so I will entertain, first do public comment, and then I'll entertain a motion on the formal resolution. Public comment, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, thank you so much. My particular concern comes with the Dixon High School and the agricultural. We keep talking about this, you know, and we talk, but we don't make any action about this being our greatest asset is our ag department. We've added a farm, and now we're talking about cutting, you know, there. And I specifically remember a board meeting where Mr. Tanaka came and he said there are students waiting to get in his class that we don't have scheduled for. So if we have students in Dixon High that can't get in this class, how are we going to ever, you know, service students that don't exist yet when we can't service the students we have? I've asked that question a few times. I've never really gotten an answer. He said it had something to do with scheduling and they needed to talk to the scheduling person, however that falls in. But, you know, I don't understand how we can, you know, eliminate that when we talk about it being our greatest asset. You know, also we have a wood shop that we have hundreds of thousands of dollars of taxpayer funded tools that just sit, some of them outside, that just gather rust and dust, and we don't even look for a wood shop teacher. You know, I mean, so it just makes no sense. We say one thing and do another. And that's all I have on this one. I hope Cindy can figure it out before she leaves.
Thank you, Mike. Kamara?
Hi, my name is Valencia Kamara. I'm the union representative for SEIU 1021, our members that work within the district of Dixon. And just a little taken back by this proposal. We just enacted SB 86, and you know, throughout the pandemic, our members have completely rose to the occasion to make sure that the communities fed, that are that, you know, Dixon keeps running. And we're hit with this as one of the first things before we open. It just seems really untimely. It seems really unwell thought out, to say the least. The governor just released that there's going to be $4.6 billion provided to every LEA through August 2022. And majority of those funds haven't been looked at yet. I mean, it just came out today. So I would ask that the board hold off on making their decision or even having a vote today until schools reopen and until we see where this money goes. There may be an opportunity for us to keep a majority of the staff that's listed within the cut list. And also, I do have a few questions. First, it's just a little odd that we're hearing about this for the first time. This week, we've been meeting with you guys weekly. And as you said, you guys have been meeting as a committee often. So we had no idea that we were going to get hit with this possibility of layoffs. And then also you mentioned that there's that SB 86 wouldn't help with the impact of the budget, and it'd be great if you could let us know why.
Yeah, Valencia,
Wait, hang on. We're going to take the rest of public comment and we'll answer at the end.
I wasn't going to answer. I was just going to point out that this is actually the certificated resolution. And I know, Valencia, you're speaking to the classified issue. So we can certainly invite you to make any specific comments you have on that one when we get to that item.
Jezebel?
Yeah, hello. I came in late, so I don't know if this has been addressed or not, but I just have an observation as a teacher and going back to school. I see that Mr. Dolan and Lucas, every single time they talk, they take their mask off. So I'm kind of confused. What kind of, is that the role model? Is that how the procedure is going to be looked at when we go back to class? And I do apologize if I came in late. I was coaching high school swim. And I know it's hard to talk over the mask, but even as a coach, when Mr. Blatch and I have to yell across the pool, we still have to keep our mask on. So I don't know if that was addressed or not. So I do apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Jezebel. Wes, you're next.
Yeah, I just had two questions about, I guess, the projection of declining enrollment. If we are looking at, I believe last year we eliminated quite a few positions FTE at Dixon High School and some at JKMS or CA Jacobs at the time to meet the declining enrollment. Are we projecting that we are going to be declining at DHS again? Or are you guys making a projection to eliminate these FTE before the actual declining enrollment hits? And the second question is for the administrative elimination. how do we as a district plan to handle our students and coming back with declining or with the populations that we have and eliminating half a administrator at each of our sites? So we're taking JKMS down to a half administrator and DHS, a school of over 1,000 kids, down to 1.5, unless we're just going to kind of move money around and hide the way we're paying these people. I feel like we're kind of just playing a shell game, and we talk about wanting to improve Dixon's image and get more people, get our enrollment up, and we are doing things that constantly frustrate the people of Dixon and frustrate your teachers and your staff that are trying to love and support your kids. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other public comment before we close public comment tonight on this item? All right, seeing none, Ryan, let's address some of the questions. Do you want to start with Mike's about how we can service students?
First, I'll point out that the Ag Leadership class that is on this resolution, I don't remember if it's 5 or 4 students who are enrolled in that class right now. So it's not a number that we can sustain. And the Ag Leadership class is actually combined at this time with a class that's called Ag Practices. And that class has 5 students in it. So here's a single period that actually has 2 courses combined in the one period. So Mr. Tanaka is dealing with both those classes at the same time, but it's still only a total of 10 students. Our class size ratio is 29:1. So there is no issue of access for students with the Ag program in this area. Our Ag program, that the classes that are largest are actually the Floral Design, which is a great new elective that's about 5 or so years old. Those are large classes, but otherwise kids are not being turned away from the Ag program. And in fact, this specific class on this resolution tonight is because of the fact that there are so few students enrolled in it. There's ample space for students to request and receive that class as an option for them. So there's that. We'll entertain Valencia's questions under that item. Okay. And then Wes had a couple of questions related to enrollment. So we have projected a 5% decline in enrollment for the district for next year. This is a very conservative approach, meaning that we are projecting a large drop. We can, even driving out here today, we see progress on more new homes. You go out to the Homestead area, you see great progress on homes. We certainly hope that those homes will bring us students in addition to the efforts that we talked about previously. So the 5% figure is district-wide on the revenue side. And then what we do is we take that and we work with our enrollment projections. And that's how we ended up with, we needed to reduce 3 FTE in the elementary based on our projections for how many students will be there. The same process for the middle school and the high school. The community day program, which again is something that we're reducing now, but believe we have student needs that we're going to have to address through an alternative approach. So some form of expenditure on the students who that program serves come back over time. But it's the 5% is the total estimate projection that we have for the whole district, and then it is calculated out by school site. Okay. Timing around this, you can't reduce after you get your bodies for the same year. So if we ended up with 100 fewer students at Dixon High School, let's say in August we could not do staffing reduction. The staffing reduction has to be done in accordance with law, which requires this preliminary or precautionary notice by March 15th, the final notice by May 15th. And of course, at any point in time, a notice can be rescinded, not issued, and people brought back. The number of, and Lloyd cited it, I think it was 23 or 24 FTE on the resolution last February or March. that number was much smaller by the time we had our enrollments and staffing done, all those issues. But we don't have the opportunity to delay taking action because of that March 15th obligation, right? And the final note I'll make is, I think I was really clear talking about the middle school and high school administrative positions and saying that we are considering alternative ways to fund this. And any kind of suggestion about not being transparent or clear here is just off base. I said it about the admin positions, I said it about certificated positions, and I said it about classified positions, that we're looking at those dollars and seeing, are there ways that we can redesign jobs, create new jobs, anything of that nature. So I make mistakes in my work. I do. I'm like anybody else, but I believe tonight I was really clear about this approach that we're taking and the opportunities that we will pursue to restore and rebuild and create new positions that will directly meet the needs of our kids and families and staff coming back for next year after all this. So.
Thank you. And I will, I'm going to just address Jezebel's comment. Thank you for your coaching. You did miss the announcement I made at the beginning that speakers, we're socially distanced. We have all the barriers up. And so speakers, because this is a public meeting, we're going to go ahead and take our masks off if we choose to more clearly address the public. So that is the answer to that question. And now I'm going to entertain a motion for the resolution 211644 relative to the reduction or elimination of particular kinds of certificated services. Is there a motion? Okay, I'll make the motion. Is there a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second. This is a resolution, so we need to do it by roll call. Lloyd? Great, thank you. Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
DJ?
Aye.
And I as well. Motion passes. We're going to move on to resolution.
I don't mean to interrupt, but I didn't hear what Lloyd's vote was. Like, I'm assuming I know
He
what
voted,
it was.
I'm sorry, he voted yes.
I
voted aye.
I was just making sure.
Yeah. Just a little technical difficulty here. Sorry about that. Okay, so we're moving on to C2, the resolution 211645, Dixon Unified School District Board of Trustees relative to the determination of seniority among certificated employees with the same seniority date resolution.
Okay, thank you, President O'Halloran. So this item before you is to discuss, sorry, I changed it to PDF. So now I'm having trouble shifting through the pages. Okay, there you go. So from year to year, teachers may have the same seniority date because of the first day of school being on the same day for all certificated classroom teachers. This resolution will set the criteria for staff to be able to break that tie to determine seniority dates or seniority rankings for the 21-22 school year. And then after going through the point system, which I'm going to show you here shortly, if there is still a need to break that tie through a lottery process, then my process, as similar to last year, is I will be reaching out to the DTA president to assign a representative to participate in the lottery process with me so that that process can be conducted and that the results can be recorded at that same time. The category 1 is based on a point system, and I won't go through each of those point systems, but basically the number of credentials or supplementary authorizations that an individual has, including degrees, will assign them a certain amount of points. Through this point system, sometimes that may break the tie, However, if it does not break the tie, then that means we'll go to category 2, which is the lottery process. Staff recommends approving this resolution so that we can determine the seniority ranking for next year for those that have the same seniority date. And I will entertain any questions.
All right, are there any board questions on this seniority date resolution?
So staff had input on this?
Was that a question?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, okay, sorry, I wasn't sure if someone was talking. So this resolution was taken last year, and I did share it with the DTA leadership team at that time. It's the same exact criteria as last year. Nothing has changed. So for those that participated in that conversation from the leadership team, including anyone that was impacted last year, because we had one-on-one meetings with individuals in HR, I was able to walk them through and explain the resolution and the process to them.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other board questions, comments before I move on? Okay, I'm going to open for public comment on this resolution. All right, seeing no public comment, I will accept a motion for this resolution.
So move.
There's a motion. Is there a second? All right, there's a motion and a second. The roll call vote. And Lucas, I'm going to take you at the end. So Lloyd,
Aye.
Jewel,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
DJ,
Aye.
and I as well. Lucas.
I believe this has to do with like the public and the jobs and stuff, so I abstain.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that motion passes, and we're moving on to resolution 211646, the Dixon Unified School District Board of Trustees relative to the elimination and/or reduction of classified employee services.
Okay, thank you again. This item is related to classified, very similar to the presentation I did earlier with certificated, with just maybe a couple little differences here and there because of the ed code requirements and the process in going through the staffing review. Since it didn't really necessarily completely tie with enrollment for all classifications, since SEIU has various different position and job descriptions and classifications within their bargaining unit. We did go through the process very similar to certificated and management and just all sites and departments. And what we did do this year was we did review any possible consolidations of any positions or duties, whether within the site or departments, when we had individual meetings. We also reviewed vacant positions and staffing needs for next year. When it came to current and projected enrollment, that did apply to our food service department because it does determine the number of students that we serve, the participation rate, and the funding that comes from food service. And just the overall review of staffing for each site and department. The ed codes are stipulated here in regards to what we need to comply with. It is law. And anyone impacted by layoff due to lack of work or lack of funds will be eligible for the reemployment period of 39 months per the ed code. And that notices will be issued no less than 60 days from when the notice will go into effect. And as you'll see in the board packet, the resolution for the classified reductions is shown again here. Brian, I don't know what the preference is. Should I just go through the PowerPoint and see if there's questions, or should I go through the resolutions? Because I think some of these things we probably want to touch on. The first and foremost thing I do want to highlight is anything that is noted vacant next to that position title would have nobody impacted in that position since it's vacant right now, and it would be closed for next year. So no one's currently in that position.
Yeah, Cindy, I think going through the PowerPoint makes sense.
Okay.
I think that most people don't have any daily working with FTE of this nature. If we can at least give an approximation of, I mean, I'll do one for us, 0.125 FTE, that's one hour is what that amounts to. So Cindy, as you go through, if you can give a sense of how much time in each position we're really talking about to help folks understand. And also then maybe when we're done, we'll talk a little bit about some of the movement or adjustments that we're looking at with some of these positions.
Okay, sounds great. Thank you. 1.0 is 8 hours a day. 0.25 is 2 hours. 0.5 is literally a few minutes a day. But again, this is, aligned and tied to, the number of students that we're serving and the participation rate for students that completes the forms every year. And 0.70625 is 5.65 hours per day, or 28.25 hours a week, however you want to look at it that way. Right after departments, we have school site reductions listed there. And you'll see the grand total for everything above is 6.96 FTE. I do want to emphasize that while we do have to adhere to Ed Code in regards to meeting the timeline for any notices that must be issued, there's also another layer of analysis that has to be taken into consideration, which is Article 13 in the SEIU contract that outlines the layoff and the displacement rights that an individual may have. So that analysis would have to be conducted after the board takes action. And of course, very similarly, we will take all known attrition into account to minimize any notices or any displacements of any current employees to the extent possible. Once the analysis is completed, notices would be generated and issued. And I always put in the notification to schedule and make an appointment with me so that we can have a conversation on an individual basis that pertains to their particular situation, and give them that opportunity to understand what's going on and what the process is and what the rights are. I will continue to work with our SEIU leadership team to keep them informed of the progress and the process. But at this point, I haven't done any analysis or taken into account any analysis until the resolution has been considered and approved. And during our meeting, I do provide them information pertaining to their situation, including EDD information, and also asking them to update their contact information. So we have that should we need to contact them so that we could offer them a reemployment when that time comes. Staff does recommend approving this resolution tonight, and I can entertain any questions you have.
Okay, board questions? Anybody? Board questions? Board questions? No. Okay, I just want to emphasize then, Cindy, in this particular resolution, because we are, we're looking at some full-time positions as well as some of the part-time positions. But I want to emphasize at this point in time, this is something we need to do in terms of deadline, right? I mean, we have a 60-day notice. That's why we're doing that now, but we're going to continue to review options for employees.
Yes, so the 60-day notice, by the time they are issued their notice, they will have 60 days, maybe a little bit more than 60 days notice. I think it's fair that employees are notified at least as much in advance as possible, given what we know now. But you're absolutely correct. So much changes between now and the end of the school year. Resignation, retirements, just the natural course of people promoting and going to different positions that creates another opportunity for someone else to apply, go through the process. And so all of that does get reviewed and evaluated even after today or even after tonight. So that's always going to be an ongoing process, and it could bleed into the summer, and someone could be reemployed back if nothing changes for them by June.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I'm going to go ahead and open for public comment. Mike, go ahead. Oh, sorry, DJ, did you? Oh,
DJ wants to go.
I just have a quick comment here is, you know, in the superintendent, Lisette, in her letter earlier, she mentioned one of the reasons for our, you know, lower budgetary standing is the support for the CBO is minimal. And I noticed that one of the cuts here is for, you know, in the accounting offices. I know you went through a whole process. I guess I would just like to hear a little bit of the logic. It just seems, you know, disparate. It doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So I guess if you could explain to me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, I'll speak to that, DJ. Thank you for the question. So this is a position that was created in January of 2016. We went through all of our job descriptions at that point in time. They were updated. Salary schedule adjustments were made. Some positions were converted from previous titles to this to the current titles. So this specific position is one of those. And what we have found over time is that one of the forms of support that would benefit the business office and the work of the chief business official, regardless of who is in that, is if there were a higher level accounting position in the office. So our intent here is to eliminate this position that is lower level than what we need at this point in time, and replace it with a position that is more specific to the needs in the office. And in particular, one of the things that we're focused on is being able to meet the recommendations that came from our FCMAT study of 2019, and then we're gonna see the FCMAT study again. They're coming at the end of March, actually, to share that with you really quickly. So unfortunately, the process requires us to eliminate this position to establish the new one. We're not able to carry both, right? And it is the new position will be targeted much more clearly, directly to some of the accounting functions that then could be shifted. There's another position in the business office that currently is focused in one area. It's an account clerk position, and there's also some intention to redirect some of the time of that position into other functions. So it's not just Monique, it's the executive cabinet team that has been looking at the positions that we believe that we need to operate most effectively. So this one will be, it's gone now, a position comes back later. And absolutely, there is an individual employee in this position who's directly impacted by this. And that person is a good and loyal employee. And in any situation like this, that employee would be eligible to apply for this new reclass position. So we are not downsizing in the business office in any way. And I'll just take this opportunity to also speak a little bit to maintenance and operations, where you see with carpenters, there's one vacant and one that is full. We are not downsizing our maintenance and operations department for next year either. There is, as we've talked about, grounds and the need to fill the 2 positions that were vacant this year. We have we've identified a need, and I've got to have a different form of maintenance support in the department, I think would be the best way to describe it at this point in time. So we're also having, in a similar kind of manner, discussing what are the needs in the department, and is there a way that we can use one of the vacancies created here to reshape a position that would provide some more support in terms of some of the reporting requirements around pesticides and herbicides and safety, OSHA. Some of the things that we've heard in the past haven't been strengths in the department. So again, looking at a way to hopefully address an issue that we know is an area for growth for us without adding new FTE. It's really a repurposing of one. I'd also just point out real quickly the paraprofessional self-care. That's related to a position that is serving an individual student, and that individual student is going to be finishing with us. And so that position is just going away based on a student with that particular, who receives that particular service and no longer being with us. So the other things I think are more straightforward, but I appreciate the question about business, that it gave me the opportunity to talk about some of those other variables in here.
So I don't know if we obviously don't have full information, but I know in AB 86, they've mentioned that a chunk of money is going to be spent on paraprofessionals. I don't know if you want to talk about that, or that's worth talking about in this present moment, because it seems to be related.
Sure, and Valencia brought up both I think, well, we've talked about it, the in-person instruction grant, and then the other one, which name just escaped me, but it's a $4.6 billion one. So we can't count those dollars until we absolutely know we have apportionment letters and we know when those dollars are going to come. So it's premature to make any decisions about protecting positions, restoring positions, creating new positions, until we know what those dollars will look like. So it would be wonderful to be able to, with everything we've done tonight, pull things back and say, hey, we know we're going to get some money, but we cannot put a dollar on the ledger until we know it's received. So we fully anticipate getting that funding, and it's helping support us with our staffing needs, but we can't do that now.
Great, thank you. Other board questions, comments before I go to public comment? Okay, I'm going to go to public comment. Mike, go ahead.
Thank you, Catlin. Mr. Bowen, you campaigned on this issue, and I sent several votes your way because of that. So my classified familia is going to be looking at how you vote on this item. So please make me proud. If you want to clean up of all that Dolan BS that he sent, just give me a call. What he's basically saying is he's going to give office people a promotion, pay them more for the same work that they're doing now, because we put all of our money into office while we have an unrepresented person in that department that does nothing. But that's just my opinion. 2 carpenters have done more for this maintenance for this district than in 4 years than the rest of maintenance has done in 10 years. Main Prairie is a prime example for that. Maintenance allowed it to get that way, and 2 carpenters made it look decent. But now that the pencil pushers have a new office with new office furniture and 15 televisions, yeah, we should eliminate the carpenters because they don't do any work. Board members, are you aware that the new farm doesn't have a bathroom? It was omitted somehow. There's plumbing pipes sticking through the slab. Oh, I'm sorry. That's for people I respect. Brian, is that going to be a change order to add a bathroom over there? What's that going to be? A couple $100,000? That'll pay for 2 carpenters right there. So yeah, I expect a change order out of general fund for the bathroom. They also need an eye wash station over there at the farm building. None of this has been done or completed. I hope the board knows about this, and I'm letting the public know. Got that. Food service has already been hit, pretty hard. And now we're proposing more cuts there. You can't base that on number of meals served. That's like saying we have less enrollment, so we could cut Brian and Nick's hours. It doesn't work like that. What about the cuts to unrepresented? We passed a agenda item for that, and we've yet to have anybody take any cuts on that. I've sent you all of the board members pay comps for similar districts, and they're all overpaid for similar districts. Why doesn't unrepresented take cuts? And we continue to pass this on to classified members who are on the verge of poverty level. We're still short 2 ground positions. We've saved on my position from being terminated. We've saved on solar. We've saved on the water for the well at the high school. Yet all this money disappears. We are cooking the books. I don't care what Brian says. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Valencia, go ahead.
Yep, so basically everything I just said. And pretty much, I have the same sentiment as was just previously said. I just honestly do not feel that there has been any effort to look at where cuts could be made other than within the SEIU or within represented staff. And it's unfortunate. Again, our members have really rose to the occasion. And the first thing is seemingly that comes down the pipe is that you guys are looking to cut our staff. So interested to see what working with you guys will look like around this, and definitely would recommend that you guys hold off on making this vote or any sort of vote until the finances are looked at a little bit more closely. Just doesn't add up. There's constant cuts to classified, and we roll with it. But at this point, like, come on, when does the bleeding stop?
Thank you, Valencia. iPad, you're next.
Hi, it's Susie Altieri, president of SEIU. I want to say I wholeheartedly agree with board member McCabe. This is a very, very difficult time for our classified members. We've talked all year about how they've stepped up time and time again through this pandemic, and they've been acknowledged for everything that they've been doing. Our food service ladies have been on the front for the entire pandemic, exposing themselves at higher risks, and they've already had a pay cut and a reduction last spring. So now they're again going to be hit again. This position that's in the business office, even though we're hearing that there's going to be a revised position, this member has been an employee for 14 years. There is no guarantee she's going to get this position. These cuts are very, very, it's very disheartening, and it's very difficult for the morale, especially when so many of our members have stepped up and done so many different things. It's just a really difficult time, and definitely a morale issue for our members. Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Gary, you're next.
Thanks. Can you guys hear me? Yep. Okay. I moved some equipment around while I was working on my computer here. I want to reiterate what Susie has to say. You know, I've been involved with the union more than 10 years, probably closer to 12. I went through the cuts and layoffs that we were talking about and doing in 2007 and the cutbacks that we did do. You're talking about taking a classified position and putting it somewhere else. Dixon USD has a contract with SEIU. You cannot just eliminate a position, give that stuff to other people without negotiating with the union. Those jobs and those job positions are guaranteed to us by contract. And nobody has come to the table to discuss revamping the business office. So you guys are going to vote on a breach of contract, as far as I can tell. No negotiating has gone on. You haven't called and asked for negotiations, and yet you're going to make cuts or plan to make cuts without negotiating those cuts or those changes. That's not a good way to do things. We have been at the table and continue to be at the table discussing changes, trying to make things work and making cuts. Classified has been there since day one. A lot of us barely took any time off. And yet we're the ones, you're coming to the table going, oh, we're going to have to make cuts and change positions. That's a negotiations. That's not, you guys can make cuts and make changes that you want, because otherwise that's breach of contract. And no, you know, I'm on the negotiating team and no one's brought it up with me that we're making these changes to these positions and bringing up a new position. You can't take my job and give it to somebody else without negotiating with SEIU. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Debbie, you're next.
Hi. I'm a teacher over at Dixon High School. I actually have a question, not as a co-VP, the Dixon Teacher Association, just personal. We've all been told what the formula is and kind of how you guys make reductions in certificated and classified. I'd like to know what the formula is for reducing jobs the district does. Very simple question. What is the formula? What do we have to do to have jobs where they're paid 6 figures plus to get some? Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. And I'm going to get this wrong again. Remind me how to pronounce your name.
Aime. Yes.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just want to, mirror what, what has been said, that classified has totally stepped up to the table, right? And exactly, like, we have been acknowledged, time and time again, but yet food service is going to be taking those cuts. Like, and they have been the one that have been there the entire time. And not just that, but they have been the one who have been interacting with not just students, but also families. And like Susie said, have indeed been exposing themselves. And exactly what was just said, like how it's really difficult for me to, understand how we're willing to give cuts to the people who can't afford it, but I don't know if saying aren't willing to look at the people who can, right? Like, but that's honestly the best way I can think, to phrase it. I definitely don't find it fair. And I do, agree with Valencia that there shouldn't be a decision made tonight, especially knowing that there is money that is coming that can indeed make a difference in this, right? And I think that, even though we have to, I understand waiting until we know that for sure. But I don't know, I think that is what needs to be done, right? Is waiting until we know for sure, because, well, these are people's livelihoods. Yes, thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, is there any other public comment before we begin to answer a couple questions? All right, seeing none. Looks like we have a couple questions on, do you want to start with Valencia's?
getting a little weary. Give me your recap of her question. I want to make sure.
Sure. I just had a note about, she was talking specifically in question forms, but talking specifically about how AB 86 is
Oh,
going to
yeah.
address the funding shortfalls in the district. And I think you sort of touched on that before, but maybe you
Yeah,
can just repeat for that.
I'll just briefly repeat it that, you know, we look forward to using the revenue that'll come out of AB 86, but we don't know exactly what that's going to be. We don't know exactly when we're going to get it. We don't know if there are going to be any strings attached to it. So we cannot plan with those dollars on the ledger at this point in time. We have to wait till we get the apportionment letters, apportionment schedules, and then we can take action to spend those dollars. And that's the way every dollar that we receive operates. It's not just the AB 86.
Great, thank you. And then Gary had a question regarding breach of contract, whether we're breaching
Yeah.
a contract.
We're not. We're not replacing any classified services with management services or administrative services. We are following proper process in that we eliminate a position, we develop a job description, we negotiate that job description, including the rate of compensation with the association. And upon agreement on that job description, it's enacted and we would post and fill a position. So there's no transfer of unit work. There's nothing inappropriate going on. This is the standard practice.
Great. And then Debbie had a question about whether or not we have a specific formula for reducing admin jobs, or if there's another process that's used in terms of that procedure.
No, there is no formula for reducing or establishing administrative positions. We have some positions that are just absolutely standard in every district in the state: superintendent, chief business official, people in ed services, etc. We also have some positions that have been created through the LCAP process. So the LCAP advisory, the LCAP plan being developed, and the board approval. Those are some of our support positions in particular. The same mechanism creates certificated and classified positions that are not based on any formula. So as an example, our RTI teachers, ELD teachers, our parent liaisons, many of the other positions, compliance clerks, many of the other positions that we have are not formula driven either, but there are some areas that are based on enrollment, and we have to be responsive to those changes. And not a question, but just a final comment for me, if I can. And it goes back to what Lloyd said, and I said it earlier. This is really difficult stuff to do. And at the same time, one of the board's absolute primary functions is its fiduciary one, is to ensure that the district is financially sound. And tonight, we need to ask you to make these difficult decisions to ensure that we will be. And it is our full intent, again, to serve our students and families and staff well with the appropriate staffing levels. And so, as we've talked about, as we can restore or avoid notices, all those types of things, we will do so. So yeah, that's our commitment. I mean, you folks literally have taken an oath to make sure the district's finances remain intact. And that's a difficult thing to do tonight, especially when you're talking about people's employment.
Thank you. And I just wanted to I was going to say, similar to what you said, Susie talked about this being a morale issue. And, you know, in that way, I think the entire board would just, she's 100% right. And in particular, it's affecting individuals, but it's also a morale issue for everybody who works for this district. And I would really hope that, you know, you hear us when we say we want you to do everything possible to look, you know, under every stone and for every dollar, and also with the new money that's coming in AB 86 in particular, for classified staff, there's, some specified money coming that direction, and see if we can't reverse some of these. With that, I will entertain a motion on the resolution.
I move that we accept resolution number, can't even see the number. Anyway, the resolution for classified employees.
Thank you, Jewel. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. It's a resolution. So I'm going to go ahead. Lloyd,
Aye.
Jewel,
Aye.
Melissa,
Aye.
PJ,
Aye.
I as well. Do you want to also stop? Not
Yeah, I abstain.
okay, great. All right, that resolution passes, and we are on to student attendance calendar.
Okay, thank you. Last item, I promise. So last board meeting, I had taken a draft to share with the board in regards to what our school attendance calendar would look like for next year, and gathered input, feedback, shared it with the calendar committee. And through that process, we're coming back to the board again tonight with the same exact draft from the last board meeting, except this is the final draft that's being taken to the board for consideration tonight for approval of the 21-22 school year student attendance school calendar for next year. And so staff does recommend approval of this item. Take any
Great.
questions.
Board comments, questions on this item? Anybody? DJ?
My comment that I had made before was about making sure that the teachers, understood, or, there was some sort of either spoken or written agreement that, based on the date of graduation and their work day being after that graduation to do grades, that was going to be fine. So I guess I just either want to publicly state it or just make sure that they know it, or make sure that something happens as a result of that. I don't know how that exactly is handled, but just stating that for the record, I guess.
Yeah, thanks. And I'll just respond quickly that it already is a standard practice that seniors' grades are reviewed prior to graduation date. So I'm really comfortable that we have a practice in place that addresses that concern. And if I can, just while I'm at it, I want to, it's not a caution. We could have a different calendar next year because of AB 86 and learning loss mitigation. And that could impact, I just want to make sure that as we adopt this tonight, and we must, that things, yeah, we could be adding time or days or services or PD or so. Not a proposal, not it's a guarantee going to happen. I just think we have to remember that we're being encouraged to consider those types of adjustments as we roll forward with these dollars coming our way. So absolutely, I recommend your approval tonight, but there's going to be something comes back in the future to change this up a little bit.
Thank you. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing no public comment, I will entertain a motion on this item. All right, there's a motion and there's a second. This is not a resolution, so we're going to go ahead and just raise your hand to vote. All those in favor vote aye. Anybody opposed? No. Okay, motion passes. Great, and we are now on item D1, bridge loan resolution.
Good evening, President O'Halloran, members of the board, Superintendent Dolan, and our Dixon community. This evening, I bring forward to you a resolution authorizing the district to receive what's called a bridge loan from the Solano County Treasury to address our projected cash flow shortfall that we anticipate that we will experience at the end of this year. This shortfall is due to the planned cash deferrals from the state. Just a reminder for those who are unaware, the state in this year's budget has identified that they will not be able to pay districts their cash payments from February through June. And as presented in the first interim report, we anticipate that we will have a cash shortfall later on this year. This loan is from the Solano County Treasury, and we believe that going through the Treasury is one of the best ways for us to bridge that gap and mitigate some of our cash shortfall in late May, early June. So we ask that you do approve this resolution, and the loan is for about $1.1 million. Also, one other note is, should our financial situation change, we are not obligated, should you approve this resolution, to accept that loan. What questions do you have?
Great, thank you. And yes, board, go ahead, DJ.
I had already mentioned this to Brian privately, but maybe I just think it would be helpful to state it publicly, is that, you know, we previously approved a trans, I believe it was called. So this is going to be a better outcome for us, and we're going to accept this more than likely instead of the trans. Is that the kind of working plan?
Thank you for your question. And what our practice is to bring forth as many options as we can. So should it be the trans, a constitutional advance, or this bridge loan, we wanted to bring forth those potential options. We have identified that the two items that I'm bringing forth to you this evening, the bridge loan and the constitutional advance, which is my next item, are indeed the best options for our district. What other questions do you have?
Thank you. Other board questions? Questions? Okay. Again, this is a resolution, so we're going to do a roll call vote. Well, first, I do public comment. Public comment on this item? I didn't see any hands up. Is there any public comment on this item? All right, seeing none, public comments closed, and we will, I'll accept a motion on this resolution. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. I'm going to do a roll call vote. Lloyd? Oh, okay. I got it. Lloyd is
a yes.
Lloyd is a yes. His computer died. And my earphones are out today. All right, Luke, go ahead.
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Aye. DJ?
Aye.
Aye, and I as well. Resolution passes. Okay, moving on to the constitutional cash advance resolution.
Thank you again. This is an annual resolution that we bring forth to you, and it is a constitutional advance from the Solano County Treasury. And this is to help maintain our cash flow throughout the entire school year. It is not related to cash deferrals or any non-payment that we will receive. It's an advancement of our payments for property taxes. We have used this in the past few years and anticipate that it would be a good idea for us to continue to use this opportunity next year to help us to maintain our cash flow and protect us from any cash shortfalls throughout the year. So we ask that you do approve this resolution, and the constitutional advance is about $8.8 million. What questions do you have?
Great, thank you. Board questions? All right, seeing none, is there any public comment or question? All right, seeing none, I will accept a motion on this resolution.
I'll move.
I have a motion. Do I have a second?
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Roll call vote. Lloyd?
Aye.
Lucas?
Aye.
Jewel?
Aye.
Melissa?
Aye.
DJ?
Aye.
And I as well. Resolution passes. All right, we've reached the end of our agenda. Do any board members have agenda items for future meetings? Anyone? No? Okay, and any board announcements? Seeing none. All right, our next board meeting will be March 18th, and our meeting is adjourned.